I got my mistress pregnant. We're getting a divorce, so don't bother coming back. These cruel words were written on a letter enclosed with the divorce papers. I thought Theodore would be thrilled about our child's birth, but he was too busy cheating with his mistress. He didn't even show up for our child's birth or help name them. I could never forgive Theodore. While calming my furious parents, I headed to my in-laws' house. I'm so sorry. We really messed up raising that boy. My in-laws turned pale as they read the letter, apologizing to us. They are such good people that it almost hurts. My father-in-law sighed deeply, looked at my mother-in-law, and muttered, "Maybe we should take him down." My name is Camila. I'm 35 years old. I met Theodore, my husband, in a movie theater in my early 20s. He had tripped over the theater's carpet and spilled popcorn all over the floor. I rushed to help, and he bought me a drink as an apology, and we hit it off. He was there to see a limited-time showing of a famous animated movie. The protagonist's name was the same as mine, Camila. Theodore, a fan of the movie, was very excited. "Your name is Camila? I love that movie. I can't believe you're not someone else." "Me too. Have you seen the latest animated film?" We found we liked the same things, became movie buddies, and eventually started dating. Then, at a restaurant themed around movies, he gave me a ring, and I decided to spend my life with Theodore. Turns out, Theodore had received one of his businessman father's companies and was thriving as a young CEO. So, after getting married, I quit my previous job and joined him as an executive, involved in managing the business. My business school experience was put to good use, and it was a rewarding job. I had thought my in-laws would be intimidating celebs, but they were nothing like that. From our first meeting, they were friendly, and after we got married, they looked after us without fail. We lived close but not too close, maintaining just the right distance. "Camila, I got some gourmet coupons. Let's go eat something delicious. Oh, and it's okay to say no if it's not a good time." They would invite us out to eat and even cook for us. I loved cooking with my mother-in-law. She generously shared her secret ingredients and special sauce tips, which I would practice and serve to Theodore. Sometimes we disagreed, but our arguments were more like playful banters about whether salt or ketchup made the best scrambled eggs. My father-in-law also took such good care of me, it was almost too much. Would getting Mom a facial moisturizer for her birthday be too cheeky? "Oh, I'm at the department store now. I'll pick up some moisturizer for you too." Saying this, he gave me some beauty products I had wanted for a while. Their loving relationship always made me smile. I hoped Theodore and I could have a relationship just like my in-laws. However, our peaceful life didn't last long. When my pregnancy became apparent, a new employee joined the company. Hired mid-career, Maya seemed competent and was very beautiful. During her interview, Maya mentioned something concerning. I was harassed at my previous company. Apparently, she had resigned from her first job due to harassment, and even at her next job, she was teased about it, leading to more trouble. I was handling HR but had a medical checkup scheduled, so Theodore took over Maya's interview. Despite my reservations about her immediately bringing up past harassment, we decided it was unfortunate and that we should be considerate given Maya's tough experiences. Especially, Theodore seemed to take a liking to her, soon entrusting her with a supervisory role. Isn't it too soon for her to be in a higher position right after joining? It'll be fine. After all, unlike a fresh graduate, she has work experience. I still felt inexperienced, but I was beginning to sense some precariousness in Theodore's personnel management. However, Maya turned out to be quite a character. First off, she was incredibly rude. To be precise, her tone was polite, but her comments were harsh. For example, she didn't just correct mistakes made by newcomers or young employees. Her attacks, especially regarding educational background, were very harsh. "Oh dear, did your university teach you to make such mistakes, or is your alma mater a kindergarten? Oh sorry, it's just your intelligence that I'm sorry for." These were common mistakes that could be improved upon, but her demeaning remarks were severe. "Your parents must be sorry for raising such an incompetent person." She would insult someone's parents like this, a behavior unthinkable for a professional. Of course, I warned her, but she showed no remorse. "That's not a good way to speak. You shouldn't go as far as denying someone's character. Unfit personnel are just a waste for the company, right? I was just doing my duty as a senior." She'd just respond calmly like that. Maya, you're really harsh. What should we do?" "It's okay, she's still adjusting. Picking on the newbies isn't right." Theodore wouldn't take my advice seriously. Being pregnant, I couldn't meddle too much in company matters, but the atmosphere around Maya was deteriorating. Moreover, while she boasted about her own competence, others didn't see her as that outstanding. She was good at studying and memorizing, so she knew the business theory well but often failed to apply it practically. She also had a habit of neglecting to check her work, frequently resorting to copy-pasting. She'd submit work without making necessary changes, resulting in constant need for corrections. She didn't like this either and would come up with all sorts of excuses to justify herself. "I just worked efficiently. Maybe the way we do things here is just inefficient, don't you think?" "I understand your point, but this method is well established in our company. It's poor management from the bosses. It's not my fault I made mistakes, it was beyond my control. Besides, since you're pregnant, maybe you shouldn't come to the office so much." No matter how many times I addressed it, there was no improvement. Had Maya said something to Theodore? "Hey, Maya is a pitiful person. What if your words hurt her and she quits?" That's how he started blaming me. Moreover, Maya always bragged about buying expensive deli food at the department store. "I can't stand something as poor-looking as a cafeteria. It's smarter and a better use of time to eat out or occasionally cook with high-end ingredients at home." That's how she'd boast. I used to make Theodore lunches focused on vegetable dishes. But even that was ridiculed. Homestyle? The colors are dull, and it's 100 times better to just buy it. Poor CEO. Yeah, Maya's right. I, the CEO, shouldn't be eating stuff like this. Saying that, Theodore stopped taking the lunches I made. I hate to compare, but my father-in-law, who lives by the motto "keep unnecessary expenses down," still eats the lunch made by my mother-in-law, despite earning a lot of money. Thanks to that, our expenses on eating out and buying ready-made meals kept piling up, straining our finances. Since Maya joined, things between Theodore and me had been awkward. "You've put on a lot of weight recently. What happened to how you were before the pregnancy?" "It's just how my body reacts." Right, pregnant women can just laze around. Theodore would grimace during my pregnancy as I struggled with morning sickness and couldn't pay much attention to my figure or beauty. The in-laws were always kind to me, so it was hard to speak ill of their son, Theodore. Eventually, as the morning sickness started, it became difficult to continue working, and I stayed home. My parents suggested considering going back to my hometown to give birth, but Theodore was reluctant. "Why do something like that? Who's gonna take care of me while you're gone? You'll have to manage on your own. You just want to take it easy, but nobody around me does that. Going back to your hometown isn't the norm, you know." I wonder whose standards those statistics are based on. Theodore apparently also mentioned this to Maya. "Going back to your hometown for childbirth? Isn't that like being overly dependent on your wife? I can't respect a CEO's wife like that." That's the kind of email I got from Maya. Why do I have to be spoken to like this? The frustration just kept building day by day. Maya's condescension wasn't just towards her juniors, she was the same with older people. One day, before going back to my hometown, I went shopping for maternity goods and other items. There, I ran into McLaughlin. McLaughlin was there to buy envelopes and stationery. It was clear something was off, so when I asked, she said he was writing her resignation. McLaughlin too had been on the receiving end of Maya's repeated harassment. McLaughlin was a top graduate from a business high school, with specialized knowledge and accounting qualifications, ready for immediate action. That's why my father-in-law had scouted him and valued him greatly. Actually, McLaughlin is the most valuable employee at the company. Without her, the company would suffer significant damage. She had triplets to care for, so she never aimed for a high position. I don't know how Maya found out, whether she forced it out of her or discovered it somehow, but as soon as she learned McLaughlin was only a high school graduate, she started treating her disdainfully and forced greetings on her. McLaughlin is in a managerial role in a different department, but requests through her are blatantly ignored. When McLaughlin confronted Maya directly after getting angry, Maya said something outrageous. "Someone like you, just a defective high school grad, why should your work take priority? It's sad, really, the triplets being raised by someone like you." McLaughlin was naturally furious and confronted Maya. "My education has nothing to do with it. Why do you have to bring my children into this?" It was only right for her to be angry. But whether it was dissatisfaction or something else, Maya stirred up trouble with Theodore. "I was publicly condemned and harassed in front of everyone. I suffered emotional distress." Normally, one would scold Maya, but Theodore completely sided with her. "What's this about a veteran employee pressuring a newcomer? Just because you've been here a long time doesn't mean you can get cocky." In the end, the resolution was for McLaughlin to apologize to Maya. A little investigation would clearly show that Maya was at fault. Of course, Maya was smug about it. "Huh? Well, I'm generous enough to forgive someone like you. From now on, know your place." She didn't think she was in the wrong at all. She apologized, so I am in the right. And with that, she only became more oppressive. Being the CEO's favorite meant even the veterans were targeted, and nobody could say anything anymore. Maya's recklessness only worsened. She sent rude emails to business partners, making verification absolutely necessary. Her lengthy emails full of her own theories, or addressing important people at the partner company by their first names, were just some of the pre-professional problems piling up. But, I mean, if Maya's as pretty as she is, a few mistakes can be forgiven, right? CEO Theodore is so kind. Theodore would still say such melted things. That partner was quite a significant one, so later he was told to go and apologize along with the vice president, but Maya refused to accompany them. "Why do I have to go apologize? There's no need to humble myself that much." This was the tone with everything, so a few months after Maya joined, she was completely treated like a pariah. People would greet her and interact for work, but beyond that, no one touched anything. No matter how many times it was pointed out, she didn't follow the company-prescribed specifications, and when corrected, she'd say, "Being corrected by low-educated people like you is unpleasant, so don't." It seemed easier to just make corrections at the final stage without saying anything. I had no idea things had gotten to this point. "Camila, you must be having a hard time with the pregnancy, and it's hard to speak up. It's okay about me. But when she talks about my kids..." While talking, McLaughlin recalled Maya's words and looked even more pained. "I'm sorry for causing trouble. But once my child gets a job, maybe it's time for me to stop working so hard. Maybe retiring is an option." McLaughlin smiled considerately. "The resignation letter is just a precaution. I still have responsibilities, and it would be rude to quit abruptly. I'll try to keep going for a few more months. Please have a healthy baby." I was filled with remorse as I watched McLaughlin's back as she left. I protested to Theodore when I got home, but it was like talking to a wall. "You're not at the office right now, so you don't understand the situation. And you shouldn't be sticking your nose into this in the first place. But it's too much even for McLaughlin. We need to value our employees, right? That's why I'm taking care of Maya." Honestly, McLaughlin is getting older and her future contributions to the company won't be significant. Maybe it's time to think about a transition. Theodore left the house clearly in a bad mood. Lately, he's been staying out a lot, and something feels off. He's not helping at all with naming our child, and it feels like he's drifting further away from me. When I was in my final month of pregnancy, I noticed my toenail was split. My belly was in the way and I couldn't reach my feet, so I asked Theodore, who was in the living room, "My toenail has split and I can't cut it. Could you help me trim it?" Theodore's attitude changed completely. "Are you asking me to act like some kind of servant?" He slammed the newspaper on the floor, cleared everything off the table, and stormed out of the house. I wonder whose child he thinks I'm carrying. After all, I've even cut his nails before. This was definitely not good for the baby, so I decided to go back to my parents' home earlier than planned. When I told Theodore, his response was dismissive. All right, just leave already. You know, when the baby is born, you should come to the hospital, okay?" "Huh? I'm busy, you know." Doesn't he care that our child is about to be born? Isn't he looking forward to it? Despite his previous strong opposition to me going back to my hometown for the birth, he agreed to it quite easily this time, which felt odd. But I told myself that it's not uncommon for men to be slow to embrace fatherhood. After Theodore went to work, my father, who was looking forward to his grandchild's birth, came to pick me up. At my parents' home, I could relax under their care. My in-laws also kept in touch, maintaining a proper distance. However, there was hardly any contact from Theodore. Then, a month later, I gave birth in a large hospital. "This is our first child, right? I want you to be there. If you can't be inside, at least wait outside the delivery room." "I'm too busy with work." "You think a CEO can just run whenever his kid is born?" My parents and in-laws were furious and tried to reach him multiple times. But Theodore might have blocked their calls because he didn't show up for the birth of our baby. It was a girl, truly beautiful and angelic. But since we hadn't really discussed the name, I ended up naming her Mia. As I was settling in at my parents' home, taking care of Mia, a letter arrived from Theodore. Inside was a divorce petition. And a letter enclosed. "I got my mistress pregnant. We're getting a divorce, so don't come back." Accompanied by a photo of him making peace signs with a woman inside our house. The woman was Maya. My parents were furious, their faces red with rage. Despite the clear betrayal by Theodore, I felt oddly calm. Did his parents know about this? My parents and I immediately went to see my in-laws. "Oh my! Have you come to show us little Mia?" My in-laws welcomed us warmly. However, I had something difficult to share. I asked my mother to take care of Mia in another room while I showed the divorce papers and letter to my in-laws. My mother-in-law was speechless, and my father-in-law turned pale. "I had been thinking that Theodore was acting strange lately, but I never imagined it was this serious." "He's been quite irksome towards us too. I'm truly sorry, Camila. We must have gone wrong somewhere in raising him." It was truly painful to see my in-laws apologize. "Please stop. I didn't come here to make you do this." I hurriedly stopped my father-in-law and mother-in-law from apologizing. My father-in-law sighed deeply, looked at my mother-in-law, and muttered, "Should we take him down?" After reuniting with my in-laws, we decided to return to Theodore's house. They rang the doorbell with a fierce expression, and Theodore came out, startled. "What's going on? Why the sudden visit? How could you do this? Don't you feel any remorse towards Camila?" My father-in-law confronted Theodore as he overlaid his words. Theodore scratched his head irritably and clicked his tongue. "Don't snitch on me." He glared at me. Then, from behind, Maya appeared cheerfully asking, "Theodore, who is it?" As soon as she saw me, she almost burst out laughing. "What, the loser's wife? Did you sign the divorce papers? Why are you even here? Isn't it obvious? Theodore and I are starting a new life of love here. You've been dumped, so pack your things and leave quickly." How audacious could they be? My in-laws, further infuriated by their unrepentant attitude, stormed into the living room. Entering the living room, I was speechless. The place had been completely redecorated to their taste. Maternity goods with Maya's name were scattered everywhere, and their pictures adorned the shelves. It seemed they had completely taken over while I was away giving birth. The discussion that followed was fraught with their sullen defiance.
Theodore, Camila was working hard to give birth to your child. It was strange that you didn't even come to see the baby, and now this. You were lying to us. You prioritized your affair over important business meetings.
Theodore sulked, confronted by his elders.
Look, it's annoying when Camila gains weight from pregnancy and act all high and mighty about being a father. Maya, who respects me, is obviously better, right? I even started to find the baby unappealing. Being a father should come naturally, damn it.
My father-in-law shouted at him so loudly that Theodore jumped, and my mother-in-law slapped him, crying.
It's shameful. You also have a responsibility. You hardly look at Mia, but she's your child too.
Indeed, Theodore had barely glanced at Mia, let alone held her. Probably thinking Maya's child would be cuter.
That's annoying. She kept updating me about the ugly baby's growth like I should care. Trying to force me to feel like a dad was just off-putting, and I didn't want to hear about it when I got home from work. Why not just raise her quietly and praise me for not saying that? Yes, that's right. Theodore was troubled, you know? He's not interested in hearing about how the baby doesn't look cute in the ultrasound, or how much weight it's gained.
I felt like I was losing my mind. It was heartbreaking that Mia was despised by her father from birth.
You are unbelievable. When you see your wife unable to move because of her pregnancy, or your child who looks like they could be in danger any moment, you should feel a sense of urgency to protect them before even thinking about your role as a father. That's right. I won't recognize as my grandchild the child of someone who had an affair knowing you were married. The ones we care about are Camila and Mia only.
The two seemed as if they couldn't hear a word my in-laws were saying. Nothing more I say would likely make an impact. If that's the case, it's better to get the divorce over with quickly. I showed the alimony demand letter and made them sign it. Then, I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall.
Now that the divorce is finalized, why don't you just get married quickly? Oh, for an old lady, you sure know how to get things moving. How miserable to be thrown out with a few $100,000 in alimony.
When we returned home, my in-laws declared they were cutting ties with the two of them. At that moment, their expressions changed drastically. Perhaps they were expecting to still be accepted.
Disowning your own son? Our kid is related by blood too. This baby will become better.
Maya glared at me. Her pride was likely soaring from having stolen Theodore from me. However, it was clear my in-laws cherished me, and she couldn't accept that. But the consequences for Theodore didn't stop there.
And you need to resign as CEO. What? Obviously, you're unfit to be CEO. You favor your affair partner and make everyone else suffer. Everyone knows it.
Theodore was at a loss for words. Perhaps realizing the truth.
But I am the CEO. Yes. You can't just fire him because you're his parents, right? Well, it would indeed be difficult to make him step down immediately without his willing to retire.
At his words, the two of them lifted their chins in triumph.
But can you really continue to run the company? What do you mean? I've secretly surveyed your employees. They said if you remain CEO, they'd quit. It was originally one of my companies, so they agreed to cooperate.
Theodore and Maya's mouths dropped open. If everyone quits simultaneously, the company would immediately become inoperable.
Stop threatening me, Dad. They can't find another job that easily. I've promised to hire them if I create a new department in my company. It seems they really hated the current situation. Everyone was quite pleased. What? They betrayed us.
The two were screaming wildly, their faces turning a fiery red. However, cornered by the father-in-law's meticulous preparation, Theodore agreed to step down as CEO.
But you'll at least make me an officer, right? We can't live if you don't. Don't tell me to go back to being a regular employee. Right, Maya. Maya can become the next CEO. Sorry, but the next CEO has already been decided.
Theodore was taken aback by his father-in-law's assertive attitude.
Who is it?
It's McLaughlin.
She's the most veteran, and Camila will support her in the CEO task.
You don't have to worry at all. You won't be a regular employee. You're fired. Upon hearing that McLaughlin was the successor, Maya's mouth dropped open, and after a while, she began to throw a tantrum.
Why her? How can a mere high school grad become CEO?
Don't speak rudely. McLaughlin has been cleaning up your messes at work. Oh, and unfortunately, due to compliance issues, we've accumulated too many complaints to employ you any longer.
No, that's not right.
Maya began tearing at her hair.
It's all because everyone badmouths me. They're just jealous of my superior education. You believe those baseless, malicious rumors about me.
It was a state of complete confusion. Maya continued to shriek disgracefully. Actually, I had reported the current state of the company to my in-laws right after parting with McLaughlin. My father-in-law had been staying out of company affairs, thinking it best for Theodore. However, upon learning about McLaughlin's situation, Maya's tyranny, and Theodore's negligence, he immediately contacted McLaughlin. He apologized to McLaughlin for his son and wife's rudeness and made her an offer to be the next president, which she accepted, albeit surprised.
And one more thing. Are you really the graduate you claim to be on your resume?
Maya had practically been hired because Theodore was smitten with her at the interview. As it turns out, no background check was conducted on Maya. If we were to believe Maya's own claims, she supposedly attended a prestigious university, ranking highly enough to be announced. Her parents and relatives had impressive careers and were quite wealthy. Maya often boasted about this, though curiously never showed any gratitude towards her parents. With the salary of someone at her age and position, she owned several luxury watches that were clearly mismatched in value and frequently replaced expensive appliances, living alone in a high-end apartment in a convenient location. She lived a socially enviable, affluent life. It was puzzling why such a person would bother working for us. I get bored staying at home, she had said as her reason. I had seen other wealthy people who got along well with their in-laws. They were all calm individuals. The rich do not quarrel. This proverb seemed true enough. That someone from that background could become so aggressive and so full of a victim mentality, blaming others, was indicative of poor upbringing.
I'm sorry, but I had to check. It turns out you did attend that university, but you were expelled midway through. What? For plagiarism in your reports and thesis. And other misconducts, it seems. It didn't take long to find out.
Maya bit her lip and looked down. Theodore stood up and began to berate Maya.
So, you lied to me? Is that why you never invited me to your home? What? I approached you because you were the CEO, and now this mess happens.
Maya's parents are fairly wealthy. Despite their disapproval of her academic dishonesty and dropping out of university, they hoped that throwing her into the working world might straighten her out. Yet, her tyrannical behavior led to her dismissal from her job, causing significant financial losses for the company, which resulted in her parents giving her a severance payment and kicking her out of the house. It was enough money to live a lavish lifestyle for a while, but there was no way Maya could lower her standard of living. Eventually, her savings ran out, and she even started accruing debt. That's when she set her sights on Theodore, a young CEO, intending to secure her position by having his child, based on the fact of their relationship. Her disregard for others in the company stemmed from her belief that they would all eventually be her subordinates, using her uncompleted university degree as a reason to look down on them. Losing the presidency to McLaughlin must have been an unbearable humiliation for her. When I heard that her claims of being harassed at her previous job were just a preemptive strike and a strategy to gain sympathy during her interview, I must have looked as if I were staring at an alien.
So, I lost the company because of you. And that kid of yours must be a lie too. No, this really is your child.
They started an ugly fight despite both being about to become parents. When I was pregnant and feeling ill, Theodore was having an affair and mocking me. This situation was entirely of their own making. My in-laws suggested they would kick Theodore and Maya out and told me to stay at the house, but I refused. After struggling with morning sickness and desperately preparing the house for the baby, I couldn't bear to return to a home filled with Theodore and Maya's wedding photos and their lovey-dovey selfies. Theodore and Maya eventually left the company. As expected, their married life was reportedly not going well. Theodore was probably hoping for financial support from the company or his father-in-law, as his own savings were minimal.
How can you just disown me like that? Do Dad and Mom hate me that much? You abandoned Camila and Mia. If you want help, you should start by apologizing to Camila. Why should I apologize to her? I definitely won't.
Theodore, stubborn to the end, used his connections to start working at another company. However, accustomed to being a top executive, he struggled to fit in. For example, he would leave meetings abruptly and not return, going straight home.
He said his explanation was so boring that it wasn't worth my time. I was a CEO, so I know these things.
Theodore would say, unapologetically, even when reprimanded. And there were worse mishaps. He once accepted a delivery from a vendor but forgot to pass the invoice to accounting.
I sent the invoice well before this month's payment deadline, didn't I?
Pressed by the vendor, he finally checked and discovered the paperwork error. And she responded to this fact without any remorse.
I completely forgot to send it to accounting. The payment will be next month. That's a problem. It's been a month and a half since I submitted it. It's your mistake. Please handle it urgently. So, I just sent it to accounting, and even though it should be the month after next, I've asked them to make it next month as a special favor. Isn't this a bit too persistent?
Apparently, Theodore snapped at a perfectly reasonable request from the vendor, speaking as if he was the victim. Naturally, the vendor was furious.
How can you excuse your own mistakes like that? You are not fit for this discussion. I'd rather talk to your boss instead. What? Why would you say that about my work? Hey! Are you even aware of the inconvenience you're causing? It's because you have no sense of responsibility that I'm saying someone else should take over. Enough already.
Theodore was scolded and had completely become disillusioned with his job. Furthermore, Theodore had irritated his typically mild-mannered clients to the point of anger, making him a nuisance in the company.
I'm an adult and yet they speak to me as just hey. That's unbelievable.
Normally, this would have been a sobering situation, but Theodore was unrepentant and ended up being fired. Naturally, this cut off his source of income, and with constant quarrels with Maya, Theodore hopped from job to job. He kept asking his in-laws for financial help, but they continually refused. A year later, I was raising Mia, watched over by my parents and in-laws. One day, as I stepped outside the house holding Mia, I saw a man standing there. As I noticed him staring intently at us, I continued to soothe Mia, when suddenly he began to sob, covering his mouth.
What's wrong?
The man suddenly approached and tried to touch Mia. I instinctively stepped back and then recognized it was Theodore, looking emaciated and as if he hadn't been living well.
Theodore! You've raised Mia to be so big, were you waiting for me?
He was making no sense. Just as Theodore reached out towards us, my father, seeing this, ran towards us with a shovel.
Why are you here? Get out! Wait! I came to pick up Camila.
Theodore claimed his marriage was a mess. Maya had given birth, but they were broke and living in poverty. After a DNA test confirmed the baby was indeed Theodore's, debt collectors began to harass them, making life difficult. When Maya tried to return to her old company, McLaughlin personally turned her away. Seeing the company thriving and harmonious without her, she had a meltdown.
Why? I deserve to be in charge. Please leave, you're causing a disturbance. Your seat here is no longer available.
McLaughlin said calmly as security escorted a stomping Maya away. Theodore and Maya's relationship had soured, and Theodore wanted to leave Maya and the baby and come back.
She used to be so beautiful, and now with her messy hair, I can't stand to look at her. Come on, Camila, come back to my house. If you're there, we can kick Maya out.
What are you talking about?
To think of abandoning your new family as well, you really haven't changed at all. I will never let Mia meet you. Stay away from us.
Theodore looked desperate. You've become just like your mother, completely losing the innocence you once had.
If you don't leave, I'll call the police.
My father, threatening with the shovel, seemed to frighten Theodore enough to make him flee. I'm sorry, our foolish son has. I talked to my in-laws, who apologized and then agreed to install security to ensure our safety.
If he lurks around again, I won't hold back.
Although I doubt I'll have anything to do with Theodore and Maya again, their intense personalities haunted my dreams during tough times. I want that to be the last of it. In my arms, Mia slept peacefully. Even without a father, she has the strong support of both grandparents. She will definitely be happy. Above all, I am determined to live positively for the sake of this little life before me.
Has the transfer not happened yet? Fulfill your motherly duties.
What? I'm not your mom though? Huh? At my declaration of not being her mother, Mary hesitated for a moment. Her face, selfishly demanding money, had begun to resemble that of my mother-in-law and Kevin's.
It's because of your affair that our family fell apart, so take responsibility.
Hearing Mary spout lies as if they were truths, it seems she hasn't yet been told the actual story. No matter how much she's been influenced by my mother-in-law and Kevin, Mary's personality has become severely distorted. Mary might be a pitiful child, but she's at an age where she can be confronted with the truth. Given what I've been through, this would be a minor thing. I held back Henry, who was trying to support me, and faced Mary directly. I'm Jennifer Smith. 48 years old. Next time, there's a deep-sea fish exhibit at the aquarium. How about we go together over the weekend? Really? Let's definitely go. I'll book the tickets. Now, I live happily with my beloved husband, Henry, but I'm actually remarried. My previous marriage was truly like going through hell. I still occasionally have nightmares about my ex-husband Kevin, my former mother-in-law, and my daughter Mary. In my life with Kevin, my previous spouse, I lived with my mother-in-law while raising our daughter, Mary. However, my mother-in-law and I just didn't get along. Kevin and I got along because we were alumni of the same university, but it seems that didn't sit well with my mother-in-law.
A woman like you getting an education means nothing. A cunning daughter-in-law like you is not suitable for my son.
Every time we met, it was just a stream of snide comments. Moreover, she would always find an excuse to call me over to do chores or go shopping. Kevin initially stood up for me. Mom is from an older generation, so she's a bit set in her ways. Sorry about that. He would apologize and take me out to make up for it, but it seems he grew tired of it. His efforts to protect me from mother-in-law's bullying became lackluster. Hey, can't you do something about your mom? She asked me to come clean again, but I'm working too, so I don't have time. It can't be helped, right? That's just how she is. Besides, she doesn't mean any harm, so you should manage it wiser. His indifferent attitude became more apparent. I thought about separating from mother-in-law, but both Kevin and I were working. And finding childcare was tough. My mother-in-law was happy to take care of Mary, so ending the living arrangement wasn't realistic. However, in hindsight, letting Mary spend so much time with my mother-in-law turned out to be a mistake. By the time Mary was old enough to understand, my mother-in-law's values had been deeply instilled in her. Mary was affectionate towards me until she was about 2 years old. Probably because Kevin and mother-in-law didn't want to deal with the terrible 2-year-old kid, where she would cry and scream about anything. Watching a fussy Mary fall asleep would make the exhaustion from work and the mental strain from dealing with my mother-in-law disappear. I guess I did love kids, after all. However, as Mary turned 3, started speaking more, and began attending preschool, she gradually became more selfish. Yet, my mother-in-law and Kevin, who spoiled Mary, never scolded her. Discipline, which naturally means scolding my child when she does something wrong, has become my area of expertise. For instance, when we went to the supermarket, Mary often ran around the store.
Mary! I told you not to run around in the supermarket.
It could be a nuisance to the store if she bumped into products, and she could get hurt herself. That was why I cautioned her. However, Kevin and my mother-in-law would immediately interject. There's no need to get so worked up and scold her. It's natural for children to run around lively. It's the stores that have a problem if they find children to be a nuisance. That's right. Look at Mary go. She's going to grow up healthy, isn't she? With them defending Mary like this, whenever I scolded her, she would run to them.
If you don't scold her properly when she does something wrong, it's not good for her.
Don't get so hysterical. She's just a child. Besides, if you were a proper mom, maybe Mary would behave better, don't you think? Talking to Kevin about how to raise Mary always ended with it somehow being my fault. Mary also liked sweets, and beyond the amount of sweets I had originally decided on, my mother-in-law and Kevin were secretly giving her more. It got to the point where she failed her health examinations. Even then, my scolding fell on deaf ears. Mary, your mom wouldn't let you have honey when you were a baby. Little kids love sweet things, and she took that away from you. What a mean mom, huh?
Yeah. I hate mommy for saying I can't have sweets.
Botulinum toxin? That's not a big deal, right? Don't be so uptight about a little candy. You can just adjust with cooking. They were not only ignorant about allergies but also seemed not to appreciate the efforts I had made to protect Mary all this time. And they always sought Mary's agreement, so she never reflected on her actions. Instead, as Mary grew to dislike me more with each passing day, my mother-in-law doting only reinforced her bad behavior, making her mean streak all the more apparent. My candy is gone. Oh. There it is. Mary would say, pointing to my share of the sweets after she had finished hers. When I scolded her for this, thinking it would affect Mary's character in the future, she screamed and cried, "It's not my fault." My husband and mother-in-law, feeling sorry for her, comforted her by giving her sweets and starting to play fun games with her. This had become a loop. Eventually, Mary grew into a grade schooler and, it seemed, was able to excel in her studies more than others. Particularly, teaching her the abacus seemed to help. She became good at mental arithmetic and math. Around the age of 10, she was even invited to a regional TV quiz show and advertised as a prodigy, which made Mary overly confident. As a result, not only my mother-in-law and Kevin but also relatives doted on her.
Mary definitely takes after Kevin. She's so smart. Absolutely. Mary is our pride and joy. Maybe it was my teaching that did it. She could be a doctor or a lawyer in the future. Of course, I should be. I mean, it would be weird if I couldn't handle such simple problems.
While I was pleased to see Mary's talents flourish to this extent, her arrogant attitude became increasingly apparent. I know more words than you, so I'm amazing. Why can't you do this? Mary compared herself to a 5-year-old relative and made the child's mother angry. I ended up apologizing them profusely. Trying to make Mary apologize was futile. She insisted she did nothing wrong, so she saw no need to apologize. Mary, you can't look down on people. Even if you're good at your studies, it's meaningless if you don't understand how others feel. What's wrong with telling the truth? If you're upset, why don't you become a genius like me? Mary would retort with such blatant defiance. That attitude started to be directed towards me as well, especially when I scolded Mary. The fact that my mother-in-law and Kevin always sided with her only worsened her behavior. Hey, I need money for some cosmetics. I can't give a grade schooler that much money. You just bought a $100 game the other day.
So? You couldn't even do simple calculations at my age. I'm telling Grandma.
She would retort dismissively. If I refused to give her money, my mother-in-law would complain, and ultimately, she would end up giving Mary the allowance. This is why Mary's discipline was going nowhere. With private middle school entrance exams on the horizon, she became even more conceited, making persuasion extremely difficult. Consulting Kevin was futile, he was too overjoyed to listen. If this continues, she'll become despised. She won't listen to me, so I want you to firmly tell her. You're just stupid, and that's why you don't get along. She truly is my child. Kevin was too caught up in Mary's potential future and fell deeper into gambling.
Have you been to the gambling again? We're not wealthy enough to be splurging like this.
I'm only spending within limits for fun, don't order me around. Plus, Mary will earn plenty in the future. Kevin was unreliable, and the ongoing disputes with Mary, along with my poor relationship with my mother-in-law, were mentally exhausting me. Mary's haughty demeanor towards her schoolmates led to troubles, prompting calls from her teacher. She prided herself on cornering others with her logic, leaving adults at a loss on how to deal with her. My memories of this period are patchy, likely due to the strain of my relationship with Mary. And then came the fateful day. On this day, Mary received her private middle school entrance exam results, passing with flying colors, and the house was filled with joy. However, as the mother-in-law planned to go out for a celebratory dinner, Mary uttered unbelievable words. "Don't come, old woman. You'll just ruin the fun." "What do you mean?" I asked, my mind going blank for a moment. Never did I imagine being referred to as old woman by my own daughter. "She doesn't want to eat with you." "Indeed, we don't need a nagging old woman around." "That's right. A cheeky woman like you isn't family."
That's exactly what it means. An old woman who only says mean things have no rights. And dressing up for nothing, how lame.
Laughing scornfully, the three of them left for the restaurant I had reserved. Left alone in my best clothes, I crumbled at the entranceway. I had reached my limit. Being disregarded to this extent, I had no confidence in continuing to live like this. While they were out dining, I went to the municipal office to pick up a divorce form. I decided to leave the divorce paper in the living room and return to my parents' house. Later, I received an email from Kevin. "Hey, what's this about? Divorce, seriously? You got mad over that? I just can't keep up with you all anymore. You take care of Mary. To think you could have been the mom of a prodigy and you're wasting it. Fine, I'll give you the divorce. I don't care at all whether Mary is a prodigy or not. What mattered most to me was escaping the house as quickly as possible." Hoping to speak to Mary one last time, I asked Kevin to put her on the phone. "Divorce? Fine with me. If it means I don't have to hear you nagging anymore, then rather, it feels like I should say thank you." I had hoped for some words of remorse, but expecting that was foolish of me. Nothing I had taught Mary had resonated with her. "So, you're not needed." By then. The call was abruptly ended, and my over 10-year marriage ended just like that. My mother was surprised when I suddenly returned home, but after I explained everything, she had tears. "I can't forgive anyone who bullies my precious daughter. Forget about having a granddaughter, just stay here." She welcomed me back. For the first time in a long while, I felt cared for and cried all night. I had remarried, trying to forget that terrible marriage and started a new life. Just as my life had stabilized almost 6 years later, a call came through on my smartphone. I was at work and couldn't answer, so it went to voicemail. Thinking it might be work-related since there was no name, I played the message. But the voice that came through was unmistakably hers. "Hey, it's Mary. Why didn't you pick up right away?" I nearly dropped the phone in shock. What could Mary possibly want after all this time? I'll forgive you for not picking up the phone, so I'll make it quick. Give me some money. Deposit $20,000 into the account I'm about to tell you. The message ended with those words and an account number. I stood there, mouth agape. To call out of the blue demanding such a large sum of money was outrageous. Besides, I should have no ties or obligations to my daughter anymore. I feared getting involved again might disturb my peaceful life. I decided to act as if I hadn't heard the message. Ignoring it seemed the best response, but Mary's demands for remittances only increased as days passed. The phone's been ringing, is something up? It's nothing, really. Henry, my current husband, looked curiously at the persistently ringing phone. A few days later, after a date at the aquarium with Henry, we decided to grab a meal at a nearby food court. As I was walking towards Henry with a sandwich meal, I was suddenly struck from the side. After hearing a dry sound, I felt a throbbing pain and realized I had been slapped as I saw the remnants of the sandwich scattered on the floor.
Jennifer! Are you okay?
Henry, having witnessed the whole scene, rushed over to me in a panic. Looking to the side from where the blow had come, I saw the face of a grown-up Mary. She seemed to have gained a significant amount of weight, likely due to poor dietary habits. Given that Kevin and my mother-in-law constantly indulged her preferences, it was no surprise she had put on weight. Mary?
Why are you forming a new family when you already have a child like me? Go to hell and reflect on your actions. I'll never forgive you.
As I stood there in confusion, Mary continued to berate me. Why are you doing this, and am I not your family anymore?
But you were my mom, right? It's your fault you got divorced because of your affair. I've had to live with the stigma of coming from a broken home, so you owe me compensation.
Mary's irritation was evident as she stamped her feet increasingly louder.
Has the transfer not happened yet? Fulfill your motherly duties.
What? I'm not your mom, though? Huh? At my declaration of not being her mother, Mary hesitated for a moment. Hearing Mary spout lies as if they were truths, it seems she hasn't yet been told the actual story. Mary might be a pitiful child, but she's at an age where she can be confronted with the truth. Given what I've been through, this would be a minor thing. I held back Henry, who was trying to support me, and faced Mary directly. What? You're still hung up on the past? You still have an obligation to pay child support, you know. That's where you're wrong. I'm not biologically related to you. What? Don't start with that nonsense just because you want to escape responsibility. It's your fault for cheating, isn't it? Me, cheat? That's absurd, but Kevin must have filled Mary's head with all sorts of lies. And despite the cruel words Mary had said to me over the phone during the divorce, she seemed to have conveniently forgotten all about that. Kevin must have told you things that suit him. The divorce wasn't because of any affair of mine. I was just fed up with you all.
Quit your excuses. I need money now, anyway.
Accepting such a ludicrous demand for $20,000 out of the blue was out of the question. Even if what you're saying is true, I can't just come up with a large sum of money all of a sudden. Why do you need it? Mary explained that she had successfully accepted by her choice of university but couldn't enroll because she couldn't afford the entrance fees and other expenses. So, she needed money for enrollment and other expenses after university admission.
Since then, Dad's been wasting money on gambling like water. You need to do something.
It seemed Kevin's gambling habit hadn't changed and had only gotten worse. Towards the end, he even started taking money from my wallet, making it clear how difficult it was to escape addiction. I sighed with a mix of relief and bitterness, thinking I really did well to leave.
What are you laughing at? I was called a prodigy, so hurry up and give me the money.
As I've been trying to tell you, I'm not your mom. Taking a moment, I then shared the truth with Mary. I had always loved children and dreamed of having my own, but reality was cruel. Medical tests revealed I was unable to have children. After several tests and consultations at the gynecologist, the verdict was the same, and fertility treatments were not promising. My boyfriend at the time desperately wanted children, so we parted ways tearfully. It wasn't anyone's fault, and it was a mutual decision, but it left me devastated. I thought I would never be able to hold my own baby in my arms. That's when I met Kevin. He was shopping at the local supermarket, holding a baby, but he was clearly inexperienced. He was struggling with a crying baby while holding a bag containing eggs that had cracked and were making a mess inside the plastic bag. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but approach and speak to him. Kevin's previous wife had left him after having an affair, leaving him struggling with the care of newborn Mary. Having taken care of my younger sister before, I was more experienced with babies than Kevin. Actually, I thought that if it was left to Kevin alone, they wouldn't be able to have a proper lifestyle. I've always enjoyed being involved with children, so before I knew it, visiting Kevin's apartment to check on Mary had become a habit. Gradually, I developed affection for both Kevin and Mary, which led to Kevin and me dating and eventually getting married. The truth about Mary's biological mother running away after an affair was too harsh, so Kevin and I decided to raise Mary under the assumption that I was her biological mother. We knew the truth would come out eventually when getting a passport or other opportunities that may require birth certificate, but by then, we hoped Mary would be mature enough to understand. At first, my mother was bewildered, but my enthusiasm for raising a child got through to her. Accepting my decision, she said, "If that's what you think is best, Jennifer, then do it. I'll try my best to think of Mary as my granddaughter." But this is how it turned out. In the end, I made my mother cry, which made me feel utterly ashamed. Having failed with Mary, I was downcast, wondering if I couldn't properly raise even one child, when my mother introduced me to Henry. After my previous marriage, I had pretty much given up on the idea of marrying again. But Henry was also divorced. Henry, like me, had been sought after as the heir to a company in his previous marriage, entering the mother-in-law as a son-in-law, only to be significantly tormented by his in-laws. His spouse didn't defend him, and he was constantly belittled by his in-laws, unable to lead a decent life. Deciding he couldn't be treated less than human, he left his heir status behind and divorced. Henry and I met by chance when we both had returned to our hometown. Initially, I wasn't interested, but perhaps because we both carried mother-in-law scars, I found Henry's company comfortable. Maybe it was our compatible wavelengths, but being together felt natural, and we eventually remarried. So, since I'm now a stranger to you, I can't provide any allowance. We never underwent any adoption formalities, so I have neither a legal nor moral obligation to you. It seems you're having a hard time, but it's no longer my concern since we're divorced. What do you mean by that? I hadn't heard anything about this. It's no surprise Mary didn't know, given the divorce chaos happened before I could tell her the truth. Kevin probably painted me as the villain all along and couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth now. If you're struggling financially, why not ask those relatives who used to praise you as a prodigy? If you need an allowance, ask your grandma or someone.
That's not reliable at all. Neither grandma nor dad can be counted on.
From what Mary shared, after she entered a private middle and high school integrated school, she found herself surrounded by peers who were far more academically inclined. In her local area, Mary's grades were celebrated, but in middle and high school, she found herself towards the lower end of her class. Unable to boast to anyone, she ended up being reprimanded for her arrogant attitude instead. Her grades began to decline, and so did her father and grandmother's expectations. No longer the center of attention, Mary's frustrations grew, leading to a more twisted personality.
I won't forgive anyone who ridicules me. I'll get into a good university and show them all.
University is a place for learning, not for proving points to others. Do it for yourself. Plus, there are scholarship programs available. I wasn't wealthy when I went to college myself. I balanced work and study to make ends meet. Still, Mary grumbled on. Sensing something was off, I asked her directly. "Hey, did you really get into university?" "Which one?" If you show me the acceptance letter, I might consider it. Mary stammered out a few words, but then came clean, as if she thought she would get paid if she told the truth. She had been caught cheating during the university interview, leading to immediate disqualification. Mary was labeled a cheater. Because she had looked down on others, she ended up with no allies at all. She didn't send application to any other university, so there were no universities she could enter. Moreover, she hadn't engaged in job hunting, so she was also unable to start working with just a high school diploma.
It's absurd that cheating would mess up my life. Everyone's just jealous of a genius like me.
Interviews are supposed to be fair to everyone. Yet, it's only natural to face consequences for cheating in such crucial moments that could determine the course of one's life. Despite this, Mary had the audacity to remain unrepentant.
I thought you might have your reasons, so I listened quietly, but to have done something so outrageous. How could I possibly give you money for that reason? If you're out of money, then you need to work. I can't work with just a high school diploma. My pride won't allow it. It'll kill me not to get into a good university.
Such misplaced pride is better off gone. Seeing Mary throw a tantrum before me made me feel pity rather than anger. But I never wanted to revisit that hell again. Do you think you did nothing wrong? Remember how horribly you treated me? After being hated for 10 years, it's too late to seek a mother. I wanted to know if Mary felt any remorse knowing the truth. Had she shown a hint of apology, I might have considered caring for her a bit.
I don't remember such old stuff. I was smarter and just a child, so it's excusable. Don't lecture me when you abandoned your role as a mother over my cute rebellious phase.
Instead of apologizing, Mary shifted the blame to me. So quick to blame others. You're just like your dad and grandma.
Shut up. You abandoned your protective duty. Just give me the money without fussing.
I watched Mary, who was spewing such abusive language, with an icy stare. I couldn't help but notice her resemblance to Kevin. Spoiled and coddled like a princess by her grandmother and her father, Mary grew up to be hopelessly selfish and undisciplined. Her arrogance was now beyond correction. There was nothing I could do anymore.
Don't you pity me, lied to by my own father? My talents could have benefited this country.
Your talents need not bloom. You're irrelevant to my life. More importantly, your personality would be the real issue if you were to emerge into society. I delivered my words deliberately, biting each one. Hearing my words, Mary was speechless at first, but then reddening with rage, grabbed a nearby chair to swing at me. However, thanks to Henry's vigilance, he protected me, allowing me to dodge the chair. The chair struck another table, causing a loud noise that made the surrounding area buzz with commotion.
Stop it! You might have been Jennifer's daughter once, but now you're just a stranger causing harm. Damn you, spouting such nonsense. Who do you think you are, lecturing me like that? If you've been through what I've been through, you should painfully understand this anxiety. Yet, you forget that feeling and pompously lecture me. It's disgusting.
It's all your own doing, isn't it? Stop this shameful behavior once and for all. People are watching. Startled, Mary glanced around and realized that the commotion had drawn the attention of those nearby. Among them, there were students pointing their cameras at Mary, saying, "Whoa, check out the crazy woman."
It seemed she could no longer cause a scene, and Mary said, yeah, you just love to belly the weak, don't you? Leaving a child in trouble to fawn over some other man. Women really are their own worst enemies. Remember this.
With those parting shots, she fled the scene. Whether a food court employee alerted them or not, police officers soon arrived, and I explained the situation. With a table damaged and people willing to provide video evidence, there was no lack of proof. When I got home, I told Henry about the financial assistance requests I had been receiving from Mary for a while. I hadn't wanted to trouble him with this, and I apologized for keeping it to myself. Henry placed his hand over mine and said, I married you knowing about your past. From now on, please tell me everything. I may not be young, but I will protect you. Thank you. I was so grateful I couldn't stop my tears. Perhaps my failed first marriage was orchestrated by fate so I could meet Henry. I felt truly happy thinking this. Later, I received a message from Kevin. Apparently, Mary had caused a disturbance at the food court, and he was being demanded to compensate for the damages. Why did you refuse Mary's requests? She was your daughter, wasn't she? You heartless woman. How dare you demand motherhood from me after treating me so horribly? That child and I aren't even blood related. But the bond can't be broken that easily. Not helping your own daughter is inhumane. Kevin hadn't changed at all. In fact, he had been fired from his company for dipping into its funds to cover his gambling debts. Hounded by debt collectors and working tirelessly, he couldn't escape poverty.
It's all your fault for abandoning us. Take responsibility for our lives. Even Mom is angry at you.
There's no way I can do that. It seems like you even lied to set me up. We divorced because of my affair, right? No, that was just because I was sad you were gone. He probably used me as a scapegoat for Mary's frustrations by speaking ill of me. Hearing enough of his complaints, I sighed in frustration until Henry took the phone from me. Listening to you, it's revolting how self-centered your arguments are. Jennifer was forced to raise a child that wasn't even hers, and you didn't even try to protect her from mistreatment by your family. She's saying she doesn't want to deal with a man who wouldn't stand up for her.
You've stolen Jennifer from me, right? So she was cheating after all. I should demand alimony from you both.
This conversation is going nowhere. Your situation is entirely your own doing. Persist with this, and we'll consult a lawyer or the police. With a firm tone, Henry ended the call. After that, Kevin and his family's calls and messages came non-stop, but they ceased immediately after a lawyer got involved. Please, I'm begging you, loan sharks are making my life miserable. If you have any compassion, lend me some money. I don't need a poor family like this. Telling me to work, unbelievable. Hey, Mom, can I come live with you?
Your neglect has made our lives miserable. I can't just go out and work now. Send money.
The content of the messages portrayed a dire situation for Mary and Kevin. Later, my mother told me that Mary had also shown up at my parents' house. Trying to elicit sympathy, Mary acted pitifully sweet. Hey, Grandma, I'm really suffering. I have no money, no food. Can I live here for a bit? My mother was furious at her audacity. After barely showing your face and now calling me Grandma, I find it disgusting. You've tormented my daughter to the bone, and now you dare come here. My mother vehemently turned Mary away. Mary ended up working, but her lack of social norms meant she was often reprimanded and quit repeatedly. The pride she had from being pampered and adored could not withstand the reality of work. Moreover, the internet's viciousness spread videos of her rampage, making finding employment even harder. Mary's life is set to be a difficult one. It might seem cold, but as an outsider, there's nothing I can do, nor do I want to help anymore. My life with Henry is what matters most to me. Jennifer, let's go on a picnic next time. I'll reserve a nice spot for us. Really? I'm looking forward to it. I'll make a special lunch. Henry offers me coffee, inviting me to another weekend date. While not lavish, these small joys are what we cherish, living our lives in tranquility. This is my greatest happiness, I thought, as I sipped my coffee and sighed contentedly. Oh no, I forgot to buy it, Madison said, and then started laughing as if she found it amusing. Jacob joined in with the laughter. Their reactions were like something out of a comedian. But this was no sketch. Madison probably deliberately didn't prepare my plane ticket. It's clear from her usual behavior. She seems to find me, her mother-in-law, a bother. So, she probably didn't want to take me on the family trip. on the morning of the trip. In the middle of the travel season, it was going to be tough to secure a plane ticket now. So, that's her excuse for leaving me behind. Well, it can't be helped. If that's what Madison wants, I'll back down. But this petty meanness of hers might have repercussions down the line. They might regret it, but it's her doing. She'll have to take responsibility as an adult. My name is Grace Brown. I'm 52 years old. I lost my husband 2 years ago and now live with my son and his wife. Jacob, my son, is hardworking and got a job at a major company after graduating from a prestigious university. Then he met Madison, got married, and they had a son, Tom. It's a picture-perfect life. However, I'm not part of my son's life plan. My daughter-in-law, Madison, blatantly treats me as a nuisance, and Jacob just goes along with whatever she says. You should work too. As soon as she enters the room, Madison says this with her arms crossed. Can't you at least earn your own living expenses and help support the family? But, with Jacob's income, I don't really need to work. Jacob is still young, at 29, but he's already seen as a promising employee. His income is stable. However, Madison completely dismisses my argument. Don't you think it's shameful to rely entirely on your son's income for food, clothing, and the house you live in? Is that really necessary to say? It's the truth. She says with a cold voice. We can barely afford just Tom's extracurricular activities. It sounds like she's making a reasonable argument. But I know the truth. Madison splurges on designer bags and cosmetics, straining our finances. All right, I understand. Realizing that arguing was futile, I contacted an old acquaintance that day to ask for a job. I wanted to return to work as a part-timer at the company where I worked when I was young. As soon as I went back to work, Madison's whims only increased. She started to hang out with friends using the time when Jacob and I were not around. Jacob, can I talk to you for a second? What's up, Mom? I had brought up my concerns to Jacob just once before. Madison had gradually been coming home later and was starting to forget about household chores. Laundry would be left hanging even in the evening, and dinner wouldn't be ready. There were aspects I just couldn't cover anymore. Could you talk to Madison? At least ask her to properly do the household chores. It's probably pointless if I say it. All right. Jacob nodded then, but it seemed like he never actually spoke to her. Or maybe Madison talked her way out of it. Either way, Madison's behavior didn't improve. The one who felt sorry was Tom. I'm hungry. Just wait a bit, I'll make something you can eat. When Tom came back from school, he was in a situation where he couldn't even have dinner, let alone a snack. I was out working until the last minute, too. Even if I started cooking dinner as soon as I got home, dinner time inevitably got pushed back. Grandma, I want to eat pasta. All right. Let's have pasta tonight then. Yeah. Despite it all, Tom never blamed anyone. He didn't complain about the late dinners, and he honestly ate whatever I cooked. Grandma's food is delicious. I'm glad. I petted Tom's head as he happily munched on pasta, feeling relieved. Tom looks like his father, reminding me of Jacob when he was young. Jacob used to love the pasta I made, too. While thinking about this, I wait for the two of them to come home. I'm home. I heard a voice from the entrance. Madison walked into the living room. In her hands, she carried shopping bags with brand logos on them. Welcome back, Madison. Jacob, who had come home from work earlier, casually greeted her. It seemed Jacob was rather proud of his wife's extravagant spending. He felt fulfilled as a man for being able to provide his wife with a life of luxury. Feeling this from his profile, I sighed. I wonder what Madison and Jacob think about Tom. Both of you. After dinner, as Tom went back to his room, I seized the moment to speak up. What is it? Tom feels lonely every day when he comes back from school. You, as his parents, should properly welcome him home. About that, you see. Mesmerized by her new bag, Madison spoke. Her tone was casual, as if it were an afterthought.
His teacher said with Tom's current grades, he won't get into a good middle school. So, we were thinking of increasing his private tutoring hours. If you push him too hard, Tom is going to collapse.
I exclaimed almost like a scream.
Tell Jacob too. Do not push the boy too hard. I leave Tom's education up to Madison.
Jacob's gaze was fixed on the TV program as he answered.
If Madison says so, then I think that's fine too.
Jacob! What was he thinking? Jacob had always lacked a sense of independence. During his school days, that was treated as a virtue. He was the kid who listened well to teachers and parents. Now, it seems like he's just following Madison.
Jacob, you're his parent too.
Quit nagging.
The parents have agreed it's okay.
Can't you just be quiet, Mom? Exactly. Jacob and Madison together dismissed my words. But just as I was about to say more, I heard footsteps. Tom had come back.
Tom.
It's okay, Grandma. I'll work hard on my studies.
You're such a good boy, Tom.
Madison smiled at Tom. He bravely nodded back at his mother. True to his word, Tom started private tutoring sessions. It was an obviously unsustainable schedule. Soon, Tom fell ill. Tom looked feeling bad in the morning. His face clearly showed he had a fever.
Tom, you should stay home from school today. Don't make decisions on your own.
Madison snapped back, irritated, but I stood my ground.
He has a fever. He needs to rest. So, don't tell me what to do about my son.
Her hysterical voice cut off. Jacob came in with a cheerful voice, saying,
I got some time off.
Starting today, I'm on vacation.
This weekend, we're going on a family trip. Really?
Madison's mood instantly changed to a smile. Her stance shifted dramatically.
Then we need to get that fever down. I'll have him skip school, so please take Tom to the doctor.
What? Just moments ago, she insisted he go to school. Now, she's saying to skip school and go to the doctor instead. Confused but prepared, I got ready to take Tom to the hospital. Regardless of the reason, it's good that Tom can skip school. And I can take him to the hospital.
Sorry, Grandma. It's all right. Let's go to the hospital together.
Yeah. After nodding, Tom muttered to himself.
I hate bitter medicine. Then we'll ask the doctor for medicine that isn't bitter.
Really? Tom finally showed a childlike expression. His eyes were sparkling.
Is there such a thing as sweet medicine? There must be. Let's ask the doctor about it, okay?
Yeah. Holding the innocently smiling Tom's hand, I got into the car driven by Jacob. When we arrived at the hospital parking lot, Jacob said,
I don't want to catch a cold either, so I won't go inside the hospital. That's so heartless.
I protested, but Jacob didn't pay any attention. He didn't get out of the car finally, so I reluctantly led Tom to the reception. The hospital was fairly busy. Everyone looked somewhat unwell, and it was painful. Then, it happened.
Help! Are you okay?
An elderly person sitting next to us suddenly clutched their head in pain. Though I was panicked, I managed to call a nurse.
Over here! Someone has collapsed and looks in pain. This is serious.
The nurse who responded also looked pale. It was a dangerous situation.
Is he going to be okay? He'll be fine. The doctor will take care of him.
Holding the anxious Tom's hand, I reassured him. Inwardly, I wasn't sure what would happen. I wondered if the elderly person would be saved. The other patients were also looking in the direction the elderly person was taken, murmuring amongst themselves. After a while, a man in a white coat approached. In my flustered state, it took me a moment to realize he was a doctor. Good job, Mrs. Brown.
What?
Looking puzzled, the doctor explained the situation to me.
That patient might not have survived if the treatment had been delayed. Thanks to you calling the nurse, the patient was saved. Oh, it was nothing.
I thought it wasn't something to be thanked for. Helping someone in trouble should be natural. Yet, the doctor and the patients looked at me as if I was some kind of hero.
Please, stop it.
Feeling embarrassed, I looked down. Peeking at my face, Tom said happily,
"Grandma, you're amazing." "Do you think so?"
"Yes, you were splendid." The doctor's words, as if to emphasize, were followed by applause from the patients. I felt even more out of place. But I was glad the elderly person was saved. Returning to the car after Tom's examination, Jacob looked puzzled.
"Was there some celebration at the hospital? It was noisy just now." "Grandma helped an elderly man who was in trouble."
Tom leaned forward excitedly as he spoke. Jacob's eyes widened in disbelief.
"Mom, it's not that big of a deal. Let's go home quickly." "Yeah."
The car started moving. On the way home, Tom praised me a lot. Jacob seemed half skeptical, half believing, but that was exactly the reaction I preferred. By the time we got home, Tom had fallen asleep from exhaustion. I picked him up and carried him to his room. As I tucked him into bed, Tom smiled softly.
"Grandma, you're amazing."
"Oh, Tom. I really hadn't done anything special. If I hadn't gone to call the nurse, surely someone else would have. Then, someone else would have been the hero of the hospital. Is he just sick?" As I walked out of the room, Madison was standing in the hallway. To Madison's question, I replied, "Yes."
"The doctor said he's probably just worn out. Studying is important, but he's still a child with limited stamina. We can't overdo it."
"I see." Her response was as if it were someone else's concern. "Then, we'll let him skip school this week. We have a family trip planned, after all. Tom needs to get better."
"That's true."
Whatever the reason, I was glad Tom could skip school. It was that night. "Excuse me. Is this the residence of Grace Brown, correct?"
"Yes, it is."
I had thought it was a delivery or something, but a stranger was standing there. Wondering what it was about, I was on guard. The man started to tell me something unexpected. After the man left, I returned to the living room. "Who was that just now?" Jacob, who was playing video games, asked. I smiled wryly.
"Just someone. By the way, where are we going for our trip?"
"We haven't decided yet." Relieved at the expected answer, I suggested. "Let's go to France."
"Mom, what are you suddenly saying?"
"I got some invitations to a hotel in France from an acquaintance. Let's all go together," I said with pride. Jacob and Madison looked at each other. Seeing the skeptical looks on their faces, I showed them the actual invitation. "Here it is."
"Wow! That hotel was featured on TV before,"
Madison said, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Frowning, Jacob stared at me intently.
"Mom, who gave you this? What does it matter? It's a gift."
Madison, beaming, looked at me with anticipation, rubbing her hands together.
"Thank you. I'm glad you're pleased."
Laughing in response, I was foolish. The morning we were finally set to depart on our trip. "Oh no, I forgot to buy something." With an unpleasant smile, Madison said. "I forgot your plane ticket. It's too late to arrange it now, so you'll have to stay home." "That's terrible." Even Jacob was laughing, reacting as if watching a skit on TV. But this was no skit. This was actually happening to me. "Okay." I could tell from Madison's expression. She had deliberately not prepared my ticket. Then, Tom timidly said, "Then, I won't go either."
"Oh? Are you still feeling unwell?" "It's not that, Mom. It's just sad for Grandma to be left alone."
Those were kind words. I hugged Tom and said,
"It's okay. Don't worry about me, just go and have fun."
"No!" It was rare for the honest Tom to insist on his point. Crossing her arms, Madison said, "Well, can't be helped."
Then, it'll just be Jacob and me going.
Just the two of you. Nice. And with that, Madison and Jacob headed to the airport from our home. Left at home, I thought while preparing lunch for Tom and me. Madison. I knew she disliked me. But I never imagined she'd do something this cruel. Well, it can't be helped. I was predicting what would happen next. Because of that invitation. It cannot be used if she is absent.
What?
Apparently, there was such an exchange between Madison and the hotel manager upon their arrival. Jacob called me in a distressed state, and I listened to his story.
The elderly man you helped, Mom, seems to be the CEO of the company that owns the hotel.
Yes, that seems to be the case. I nodded over the phone. I had received an explanation about the situation from the man who visited me. Strictly speaking, that elderly man was the former CEO. He had handed over all company responsibilities to his son and was enjoying a peaceful retirement in the countryside. That's when he happened to fall ill and met me at the hospital.
That invitation was a token of gratitude from the CEO.
So, I thought it probably wouldn't work without me being there.
How mean?
Jacob said, exasperated, but I had my reasons.
Jacob. If you had stood up for me at that moment, I was planning to tell the truth. It's my fault?
Jacob's voice grew loud in surprise. Truly, he was unaware of his own lack of compassion. It's sad, considering he's my son.
Grace.
Madison's furious voice interrupted. Despite the shrillness that hurt my ears.
What are you going to do now? We can't stay at the hotel, and all our plans are ruined. If you had taken me on the trip, this trouble wouldn't have happened, would it?
It's because of their petty meanness that they ended up being locked out of the hotel together.
Other hotels have been contacted, and none will take us in. Then, you have no choice but to come back home. You're joking.
Madison raised a distressed voice as if she were the victim.
Spending so much money to come to France, we cannot just go back home.
I wouldn't recommend sleeping outside. It's dangerous.
If you think so, please help us.
Madison was wailing like a child.
Do something. My first trip to France turned into such a bad memory. I can't help.
Seemingly having given up on relying on him. With footsteps, Madison's voice faded away.
Is there anyone who can help us? Stop it, it's embarrassing. Mom, I'm gonna hang up for now.
Yes. I was rather relieved he decided to hang up. There's nothing I can do from Los Angeles, and I have no reason to be kind to Madison now. With a sigh, I ended the call. After a while, Jacob called again. I hesitated to answer, wondering if I should. But they are my son and daughter-in-law, after all. I decided to listen and answered the phone. What happened? Someone stole my wallet. What? I never imagined such a thing would actually happen. I was genuinely shocked. Jacob said in a depressed voice. I could sense Madison crying nearby.
In just a moment of not paying attention to my bag, everything was taken. Except my phone, which I had in my hand, my wallet, everything.
Come pick us up, please. I could hear the tearful voice. That's impossible. I replied.
Why not?
Securing a plane ticket now is difficult. That's what you said.
Oh no!
Madison groaned on the phone.
But if we wait a few days, we might be able to get a plane ticket, right? Wait a minute.
Madison raised her voice angrily at Jacob's suggestion.
We don't have any money. If we stay like this, we'll end up waiting for you, without eating or drinking. Don't talk about waiting for days like it's nothing.
There's nothing I can do about it. I could feel the tension rising between them.
Is there any other way? Don't be so arrogant.
Madison was initially angry with Jacob, but her voice gradually weakened, returning to a tearful tone.
Please help us. We're overseas and can't communicate well, and we don't know what to do anymore.
You're adults, I said, exasperated.
Figure it out and act on your own. How can you say that? Please, I apologize for being mean. Just help us, please.
Even if you say that. Thinking calmly, the best course of action would be to rely on the local police. However, it seemed Madison, in her panic, couldn't come up with that idea. Finally, Madison broke down crying, and an irritated Jacob said,
So, it's okay for us to just end up whatever, Mom? You went on this trip just the two of you, thinking you could handle it, right? What do you want me to do?
Eventually, Jacob lost his composure as well. He said angrily,
How am I supposed to take responsibility? There's nothing I can do now. As long as you direct your frustration at me, I have nothing to say or teach you.
I was about to end the call, when Madison's voice burst through the phone again.
What should we do? I'll apologize as much as you want when we get back, so please tell us.
Cool your heads first. That's right. If they could calm down, they would be able to think about what to do on their own. I chose to end the call and turned my gaze to the table. On the table, at Tom's request, was a pot of soup that had cooled a bit. I reheated it before calling Tom. Tom, who had been doing his homework in his room, seemed happy.
I love Grandma's soup.
Thank you. I smiled at his untroubled smile. If Madison hadn't done something unnecessary and the whole family had arrived in France together, Tom could have been enjoying even more delicious food. It's unfortunate because of his mother. Eventually, Madison and Jacob had to rely on the local police. They managed to get seats on a plane back home under the condition that they would pay for the tickets upon their return. Madison looked utterly exhausted at first sight. Her makeup was ruined from crying, making a mess of her appearance. As soon as she saw me, Madison apologized to me. She spoke as if groaning.
I'm so sorry.
Mom, I'm sorry too. He also offered an apology. This one here has decided not to be mean to you anymore, Mom. Is that true?
Yes. From now on, I'll do as you say.
Madison looked like she was about to cry again, perhaps deeply hurt by the whole ordeal. Then, I stroked Tom's head as he looked sadly at his parents.
From now on, I'll be the one to decide Tom's tutoring and extracurricular activities schedule. What?
Madison was shocked, but I stood firm.
If I leave it to you, who knows what will happen to Tom? But Tom is my son. Then act like a mother.
I snapped firmly. Madison shivered, looking frightened. Seeing that, I continued.
From now on, buying luxury bags and hanging out with friends late into the night are banned. You will learn to be a regular housewife and manage household chores.
I crossed my arms after saying so. Honestly, these were words I didn't want to say.
If you can't do that, you'll have to leave this house. No way! Hey, Mom, isn't that a bit too much?
Both of them reacted as expected. But this was necessary for Tom's sake. I spent time at home with Tom while the two of them were away. That's when I came to understand.
Jacob, you can't take care of Tom, can you? Well, it's true, but if so, the mother needs to be responsible. If Madison can't do that, we need to find someone else who can take care of Tom. I'll be responsible,
Madison said while blowing her nose with a tissue. It looked like a scolded elementary school student.
I'll take responsibility. So please, don't talk about divorce. Please.
All right. I thought to myself. If she's begging and crying like this, it must have been a good lesson for her. I was too optimistic. I'm home.
Madison.
Less than a month later, Madison started breaking curfew and going out again.
Weren't you supposed to have reflected on your actions? I did. That's why I'm coming home earlier than before, and I've cut down on shopping,
she said nonchalantly, laughing. This was hopeless. I decided to have Jacob prepare the divorce papers.
I don't want that.
As expected, Jacob protested. But I had anticipated that much.
Even after seeing this? What? What is this?
Looking at the photos spread on the table, Jacob's face twisted. They were photos of Madison cheating. Call it a woman's intuition or whatever. I had a hunch. So, I secretly hired a detective. These photos came with the report.
Even with this, you don't want to divorce Madison? Well, that's...
Jacob hesitated. After all, Madison was cavorting with multiple men. From their attire, they might even be nightclubs or something similar.
She was doing this when I wasn't looking?
Jacob muttered, his shoulders trembling. So, what will you do?
Divorce Madison?
When I asked, Jacob slowly turned to me. Anger was evident in his eyes.
I'll divorce her, Mom.
I see.
So, the household will dissolve then.
Dissolve? Jacob looked puzzled, tilting his head. I nodded and said, I'm leaving this house too.
What?
Jacob exclaimed, taken aback. But I had been considering this for a long time.
I wonder if you two can't become independent because I'm here. So, I thought we might try living separately from now on. But, Mom, that's troublesome.
Jacob hastily clung to me. Despite being much taller than me, he looked smaller because he was kneeling on the floor.
I can't do household chores, and what about Tom?
I'll take Tom with me.
What?
Again, Jacob was surprised. Truly, he had no interest in my actions or thoughts. I had been looking for an apartment to move into for a while now. But Jacob had been completely unaware.
Aren't you my mother? Can a mother abandon her son?
Before that, aren't you Tom's father? Have you ever acted fatherly?
Well, that's...
If he demands motherly behavior from me, Jacob should start acting like a father to Tom.
Both you and Madison are failures as parents. Mom, wait. Give me another chance. I'll get it together, remarry a decent woman, and we can be a family again.
Jacob always proposes what's convenient for him.
Anyway, I'll divorce Madison. We'll talk after that.
No, I've already decided.
Mom.
In response to his pleading voice, I turned away. The moving arrangements are already made. Choosing a place relatively close wasn't for Jacob and Madison's sake. It was solely to ensure Tom wouldn't have to change schools. That day, when Madison returned home late as usual, Jacob confronted her with the divorce papers, turning her face pale.
You're joking, right? You're the one joking around, dating with who knows how many men.
Jacob was furious, but from my perspective, both were making childish arguments. I couldn't bear the burden of the two of them anymore. So, I decided to say goodbye to both of them.
You can't just spring a divorce on me. I have no savings. How am I supposed to live? I can't even do household chores. What am I going to do from now on?
While listening to their desperate voices, I left them. Later, Jacob lost his job for being untidy, far from considering remarriage.
How do you use a washing machine? I don't even know how to iron.
That's probably why he couldn't even wash his clothes. A suit full of wrinkles and stains indeed looks bad. It negatively affected the company's image. Meanwhile, it turned out Madison had been borrowing money from friends to fund her outings. They counted on Jacob's income, which quickly led her into a financial deadlock.
Just wait a little longer. I'll find a way to pay you back.
Madison's figure, begging around, reached me through the grapevine, but I felt nothing anymore. Only Tom said, disappointedly, "They've troubled people other than Grandma too. I'm really let down."
They'll get their act together eventually.
Really? Tom seemed uncertain. After that, Tom began to dedicate himself to his studies voluntarily.
I want to be a hero like Grandma. I'm not such a hero you imagine.
I blushed and looked down. I wished he would forget about that incident. Interestingly, the CEO, upon learning of the situation, sent another invitation to the hotel. But Tom didn't want to go. I don't want to go.
Why? You can eat lots of delicious food on a trip. Grandma's cooking is the best in the world,
Tom said with earnest eyes. I was moved to tears. Tom, I'm going to study hard and become a decent adult. That's how I want to make Grandma happy. It was a mature resolve for an elementary school student. Yet, I thought, taking detours is also necessary to become a decent person. Is that so? Yes. If you only study, your heart won't grow. If you play too much, you'll end up like your mother, but studying alone isn't good either. When I explained this, Tom pursed his lips. It's difficult. Let's learn little by little. After all, his journey was just beginning. My name is Emily. I've been married for 10 years, and my husband is an executive at a major corporation. Because of his job, he travels a lot and rarely spends time at home. When we were younger, I used to feel lonely without him and would hug him the moment he returned, but now, his overly anxious behavior has become unbearable to me. His extreme neat freak tendencies would probably turn any woman off. That's what I thought. However, he came back from a business trip one day with a mistress and a child, saying, "Get out, you leech." What do you mean, get out? I've decided to live with my lover. You're no longer needed. His words were calm but left no room for argument, accompanied by a cold stare. I had endured life with such a man. Even if you tell me to leave suddenly, I have no money. You can't even do household chores properly. Why don't you get a part-time job and earn some money? We have 2 young daughters in elementary school. He used to say that he wanted me to stay at home until the kids were older, arguing that it would be sad for them to come home to an empty house. I understood his feelings and didn't want to make our children feel lonely either. Plus, I was somehow afraid to go against my husband's wishes. So, I stayed home as he wanted, without seeking employment, playing the role of a homemaker. But life was never easy. I scrimped and saved every month, repeating a cycle of extreme budgeting. Money was spent on my husband and children, but never on myself. I convinced myself that was okay. Once, I suggested that we both work to make ends meet. But he exploded in anger at the suggestion. Are you saying my earnings are insufficient? Are you mocking me? But many couples both work. But? Are you talking back to me? How dare you speak to me like that, just a wife? If you can earn as much as me, I'll forgive you. But remember, even if you do, all household duties are still your responsibility. It was an impossible situation. No matter how hard I tried, there was no way my sudden income could match that of my elite husband. I'm sorry for speaking out of turn. I could never earn as much as you. Good, you understand. Remember, a wife is supposed to manage her husband's earnings. If you can't do that, you're failing as a wife. Don't ever bring this up again. Any objection was met with anger. If the house wasn't tidy by the time my husband returned, he'd yell. If dinner wasn't ready the moment he walked in, he wouldn't speak to me. My life was like that of a housemaid or a slave. I thought I was lucky because he seemed to value family. Looking at social media, I saw many struggling with their marriages. No money, lazy husbands, cheating spouses. I thought I was better off. After all, we have children. My husband once talked about his father, who barely stayed home and would bring women home when he did. If they complained, both he and his mother would be beaten. He promised he'd never cheat or become a father like his. He held me tight and made that promise, insisting he'd always cherish our family. But over the past few years, he changed. Hints of other women, suspicions of affairs grew. When he returned from trips, he smelled of perfume. He'd laugh secretly at his phone, leave the room to take calls. Once, I casually mentioned the word affair. He exploded with rage. When have I ever cheated? Do you think I have women because I'm often away? How can you be so foolish? If I have any free time, it's for work, for our family. Why do women always talk about such nonsense? Facing his wrath as if about to be hit, I kept apologizing profusely. Even though I hadn't said a word about him having an affair, he yelled as if personally attacked. I'm scared of my husband. Our children have started to retreat to their rooms whenever they see their father, avoiding any contact with him. Moreover, he comes home late every day, and I'm left wondering whether to cook only for the food to possibly be thrown away. If he comes home to no dinner, he lashes out, frightening the children. I've been killing my spirit for the sake of a peaceful home. When did the times without my husband become my only peace? I'd be better off without such a man. This is what another part of me kept repeating. While watching dramas, I become engrossed in stories about divorce, wishing I could do the same. Hearing about others who've divorced makes me envious. Why can they divorce so easily? If possible, I too want to leave. But mentioning divorce would surely lead to anger, yelling. At worst, I might even be hit. And then, he might take the children. In the end, despite wishing he'd disappear, I can't bring myself to act. My husband cares most about appearances. Divorce would affect his future career prospects. That would mean losing my children. That's the one thing I wanted to avoid at all costs. So, I couldn't utter the word divorce. Even though now my husband stands before me with another woman and child, telling me to leave. He tells me to work part-time and earn my own money. I felt my lips twist in bitterness. Being freed from what I've endured up to now. The woman who has taken my place, stealing my husband, seems delighted to be my replacement. If she's willing to be the sacrifice, then I'd gladly divorce. Does that mean that you want me to start working? Yeah, earning your keep is the least you can do. But don't think that means you've got a place to sleep here anymore. From today, you're out on the streets, like a stray cat. I see. I'm no longer needed, then. That's right, you're not needed. A good-for-nothing like you is unnecessary. An elite like me deserves someone far more capable. All right. I understand. If that's what you say, then I'll leave. Yeah, get out already. I stood up and pulled out a document from the drawer. It was the divorce papers I had written and then given up on countless times before, fearing to confront him and thus discarding them. Yet, I still wanted to part ways. How many times have I filled these out? But now, I can finally confront him with them. Here you go. What's this? It's a divorce paper. All that's left is for you to sign. My husband looked at me, surprised. And then anger appeared on his face. Normally, he'd start yelling and raise his hand to hit me. But he can't do that now. Not with his lover here. He wouldn't want to show his true self in front of her. At least not until they're legally married. You were planning to leave me? He tried to keep his cool, a twisted smile on his lips. So, all you wanted was my money, huh? That's not it. What I wanted was your kindness. Right? Preparing something like this means you wanted to leave. That means you must have someone else too, right? So, it's the same for both of us. Do you think I'm cheating? Yes, that's exactly it. If not, why else would you have this ready? I'm such an idiot, being considerate about when to bring up divorce. What? Well, guess that clears things up. Behind that innocent face of yours, you were cozying up with another man. Quite the woman you are. I was. What? You got a problem with me? What? Your attitude like that also pisses me off. Well, always looking like you're the weakest. Never denying anything said to you. You're like a puppet. How terrible. I'm just too scared to speak. And if I say anything to my husband, it just comes back 100-fold worse. Is that what my silent self seemed like to him? But it's over now. I don't care anymore. Since it looks like you have a child on your side, I'll be taking mine with me. Sure, I don't mind. I got a boy here. Girls are useless anyway. Is that so? Then I'll take her without hesitation. And by telling me to leave, you mean you three will live here? Of course, I bought the place after all. Then, consider this a housewarming gift. What's this? It's the deed to the condo. Upon realizing it was the deed, my husband smirked and accepted it.
Handing this over means you're renouncing any claim to our assets, right?
Yes, I don't need it.
I'm not giving you child support. After all, I've been the one supporting you.
He looked at me as if it were a matter of course, as if he had no intention of giving me anything. Not child support.
What a fool you are. Saying you can't live without me. You had a good life because of me, and you can't see that. To think you wanted to divorce without understanding that. How foolish can you get? You're really short-sighted.
That's true.
Well, it's better for me that way. Can't stand being nagged all the time. After all I've done to provide for you, to be talked down to like that. The only good thing about you is that you don't talk back.
It's not that I didn't talk back, I just couldn't. Even now, I have things I want to say, but there's no point, so I don't. I told the children to start packing their things. They looked anxious, but being left with their father would have been far worse, so they had no complaints. They nodded quietly and began gathering their belongings. As for me, I went to the bedroom and picked up my luggage. It was the suitcase I had packed once before when I thought about leaving. That time. I stopped because of the children. Who knew it would come in handy like this? The children stuffed their suitcases full and packed their backpacks with all their study materials.
Hey! Hurry up and leave. Please wait a bit longer. Rushing us is unfair to the children. What's so unfair? If you're leaving, better to do it quickly.
He said this while playing happily with the woman and child. So what he really wanted was a son. Even his own children, if they're girls, he doesn't care about. I watched my husband in a daze, thinking this. Maybe I should have brought up divorce sooner. And here I was, enduring all this. And despite saying he wouldn't cheat, he did, and even had a child. I'm such a clown. Once the children were ready, I headed for the door. It's over, and yet my husband feels nothing, doesn't even come to see us off. With nowhere else to go, I took the children and moved back to my parents' house. My sister and her husband were there, and while my parents were shocked, my sister, who knew everything, just hugged me silently and said, "Welcome back." After telling my parents everything, my dad was furious, and my mom cried.
What will you do now?
I'm sorry, but please let us stay for a while. I'll find us a place as soon as I can.
That's not what I mean. This is your home, you can stay as long as you need. What I'm asking is, are you just going to let Mike do whatever he wants? The condo is new, and you're not asking for asset division?
He wanted that condo and he was the one paying for it.
But the mortgage for that condo was tough, right? You managed because you worked hard.
My sister was right. The mortgage for our 30th floor high-rise condo was excessive. His salary couldn't possibly cover it. As expected, life became even more difficult than before. Yeah, that condo really made life tough. I said I wanted to work, but even that was shot down. When I mentioned we were short, he'd say to borrow money to cover it. Ridiculous, it was all just for his pride.
To think you went through all that.
Yeah, I managed somehow, but it was really hard. If I didn't serve Mike proper meals, who knew what he'd do?
Are you really not going to ask for child support?
He said he wouldn't give it.
He cheated, you know?
I know I could, but I just don't have the energy to fight him. I'd rather just part ways quietly. To that extent. My sister murmured, seeming to understand my feelings, and said nothing more. But then, my feelings changed. It was Mike's call.
What? We're divorced. Don't call me. I know, but the kids left something important behind. What? What did they forget? Well, it's their hamster. Could we come pick it up? A hamster? Yes, the hamster is part of their family. Family? Ridiculous.
I figured Mike would say that. He'd always seen the children's things as mere toys. He wouldn't consider anything non-human as family.
You say that, but to the kids, it is family. Family wouldn't be forgotten, would it?
That's true, but in the rush to pack, they brought their study materials, but missed the hamster. So, it was unnecessary, then.
No, that's not it. They remembered this morning and were sad. Please, let us just come for the hamster.
No.
Why not?
This is no longer your home.
I get that. I'm not asking for the house, just the hamster.
No means no.
But enough.
I froze. Flashbacks of past events flooding me with fear. But I couldn't let fear stop me, not when it's for my kids.
I understand I'm being persistent, but it's something important to them.
What's so important? It's ridiculous to come back now for it.
But it's only been a day. It's a small matter.
It's futile.
Futile? What do you mean?
All your stuff, hamster included, has already been trashed.
Trashed? How could you? It's a living creature. You threw it away?
If you left it, it means it was unnecessary, right? Keeping such things would bother her and my son. So, I tossed it, no complaints. I couldn't believe it. How could he so casually dispose of a life?
You can throw away my things, but at least you could have asked if my daughter wanted it. No need.
Once you took them, those kids weren't mine anymore. Why should I care about someone else's kids?
But they're still your children after a divorce.
Look, if it was important, you wouldn't have forgotten it. Forgotten or left behind means it wasn't important. Throwing it away is no issue, that's the logical thing.
That was difficult for them.
What? You're defying me? It's not about defiance. How can you do something so extreme? An adult might resign themselves to it, but they're just children. Can't you empathize at all? My daughters were crying beside me, realizing from our conversation that their hamster was gone. It wasn't just their tears, but Mike's disregard for life that filled me with anger.
The kids are crying because what they forgot has been treated like trash.
So what?
So what?
If they wanted that badly, buy a new one.
It's not about that. That hamster isn't replaceable.
It's just a rat. Why should I care about such things? Give me a break.
But it's a life.
You're so annoying. I don't have time to care about you. If it's so important, it's in the trash, go pick it up. But the garbage collection already been done. True. Today was the garbage day. And collection time had passed. I envisioned the hamster being tossed into the garbage truck. If you get it, stop bothering me. It's all your fault. Explain it to the kids, make sure they don't forget things again.
Explain?
Well, you wouldn't be able to handle it. You can't even educate properly. You can't do housework, can't be a satisfactory mother. Whatever you do, you just can't cut it. The kids are growing up without common sense because of you.
That's not true.
It is, isn't it? Even when I come home tired, you just hide away and don't come out. Normally, if someone's providing for you, you come out and greet them. You can't even teach them that, it's because you're failing.
That's because you're overbearing.
Those were the words I'd held back, unable to say out of fear. But now that we're divorced, we're strangers. It doesn't matter what I say.
It's because you're always yelling, the kids don't want to be near you. It's all your fault.
What?
Speak to me with respect.
Why should I respect you?
You continue to act overbearingly and behave unreasonably, yet why should I show you any respect?
What a joke.
What did you say?
It's the same with the hamster.
The kids were healing their hearts with it because you're the worst parent. And you even threw that away. It's not like clothes or books, it's a living being. Don't you understand the difference? Are you out of your mind? You, who do you think you're talking to? To you, Mike, a man full of pretense who only cares about appearances.
Ugh. I won't forgive. I thought to part ways quietly, but I will never forgive you for making the kids cry. I shouted, and hanging up, my heart was pounding. My daughters were shocked, seeing a side of me they hadn't before. But I have to be strong and protect them on my own. That moment was also a resolution. And then, I decided to bring Mike down to hell. Once I made that decision, things moved quickly, surprisingly so. And a week later, as expected, Mike contacted me.
Hey! What's this all about?
Being told this over the phone, of course, I had no idea. What do you mean this? What are you talking about?
This one.
Mike seemed to be panicking or just irritated, repeating this over the phone.
Mike, if you say this over the phone, I can't see it, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I mocked him a bit. Taking that as mockery, Mike got even more irritated.
I'm talking about this, the documents from the lawyer, you know?
How would I know that?
The lawyers sent claims for child support. I said I wouldn't pay.
That was you who said you wouldn't pay.
I never agreed to that. What, and now it's all to be paid in one lump sum? I don't have that kind of money.
That's unfortunate. Anything can happen. You might even feel like jumping off the 30th floor balcony.
No way that's happening.
People aren't that strong. Especially those who act tough and shout, like you.
What, you've become quite bold since we divorced, haven't you?
Yes, thanks to you. I realized I had to be strong.
I'm not scared of whatever a woman like you says.
Is that so? Just make sure you pay. If not, I'll just have your wages garnished.
So, you were after the money after all, huh?
Pathetic.
Well, fine, I can pay that much. But what's this about?
Again with this?
The bill for the loan has arrived. I understand the loan, but it's quite high.
Yes, that sounds about right. The unpaid amount has been added to the bill.
Unpaid?
That's what I said. The condo's loan was too high, and you told me to borrow to pay it. But I didn't want to borrow, so I only paid a portion each month, and had the rest billed the following month. But I couldn't pay it off each month, so it just accumulated.
How foolish. You should have just worked.
Oh, you were the one who said when I mentioned working that managing the husband's earnings was the wife's job. You completely denied me working. Don't you remember? Odd, isn't it? Saying not to work because you didn't want the kids to feel lonely, yet you threw away their emotional support, the hamster.
That thing could never be an emotional support.
You went ahead and destroyed everything. Take good care of your new family, I said before hanging up the phone. I had said what I needed to, and now that the past debts were Mike's problem, I felt it was time to move on. I let out a small sigh, convincing myself it was all right. However, a few weeks later, Mike contacted me, unable to pay the loan.
Hey, I can't pay the loan.
So?
Can't you help me out? You're working, right? You must have some money since you went back to your parents' house, right?
What a ridiculous thing to say after all the mocking. I struggled to manage, but couldn't pay that loan every month. But you, being so competent and elite, should be able to, right?
It's because of the loan you left unpaid that it's ballooned.
Well, that can't be helped. That loan amount isn't something even an elite like you can pay with your salary. But you're so talented. You mocked me endlessly, and now you ask for help? What a joke.
Well,
besides, you have a wife and kid, you'll figure it out.
That's not working out.
Oh. Then sell the house.
If I did that, she and my son would hate it. They both like this condo.
Well, I'm not inclined to help someone I divorced.
Don't say that.
Let me tell you something good.
What?
You told me not to work, but I have been. I knew this would happen once I realized you were cheating. And the income from that job? It's quite substantial. I can't stop laughing about it.
You're lying, then give some to me.
I won't.
Why bring it up now?
It's simple. I want to enjoy seeing you suffer.
You took away something precious from the kids, so the least I can do is enjoy watching you fall into hell.
I could hear Mike groaning with frustration over the phone. After that, he paid the child support in one lump sum. Of course, I knew it was all borrowed money. Now burdened with a massive debt, Mike got hit with a double whammy of loans and debts. Desperately working, his new wife and secret child, unaware of the struggle, believed they were rich and spent wildly on credit cards. This left Mike suffering every time the credit card bills arrived. Eventually, having revealed everything to his family, Mike had to sell the condo and move into a shabby place with his 3-person family. Disliking the poor life, the woman left with their child. I felt my revenge was complete with just that, but more hell awaited Mike. His affair and secret child were exposed at his company, leading to social ostracization. Losing his place, Mike voluntarily resigned. Now living on part-time jobs. Wondering how it all came out, it turned out my sister had written a letter to his boss. As for me, I'm still earning a sufficient income. Ignoring Mike's words, I worked hard from home, ensuring my children didn't feel lonely. Now, we live a peaceful and elegant life on the top floor of a high-rise condo. Keeping a hamster.
Please, could you go visit Kinsley for me?
Oh, come on.
I'm at a critical juncture right now, wondering if I can actually make it to department head. If this screws up my chances, what are you going to do about our living situation not improving at all?
I don't mind that, really. I was planning on getting a part-time job anyway, and that would allow us to think about Kinsley's future. But James just kept saying, "You don't understand anything."
Emily, don't you think that's a bit odd? We'd need more data to make that kind of assertion. So, what should we do?
When I asked, the two of them looked serious.
Regardless of the reason, if she's being given some unclear medication, we need to do something about that first.
I got it.
But what can I do?
Then Sophia said, "Call an ambulance."
An ambulance?
Please, Emily, that's your job. My brother emphasized, urging me on.
In the meantime, we'll investigate that doctor.
Right.
We'll do whatever it takes for our dear niece.
My name is Emily McKinnon, 37 years old. I live with my husband, James, and our daughter, Kinsley. James, a former coworker, and I have been married for 13 years. With Kinsley starting middle school this spring, I thought about starting to work part-time, leading a slightly different life from before. We thought we were living relatively peaceful days. Yes, until very recently. Mom, my leg hurts. One day during summer break, Kinsley suddenly said this when she came home from outside.
My goodness, what happened? Where does it hurt?
It's a dull, heavy pain deep in my knee. It was unusual for her, who is normally so tolerant of pain, to say something like this. This meant we had to take her to a doctor, so we decided to go to Thatcher Clinic, our family doctor nearby. Thatcher Clinic has been taking care of us since we moved here after getting married, from the time of the previous doctor. Now, the daughter of the previous doctor, Sadie, has become the head doctor, protecting the health of the people in this town. We are one of those families. When Sadie saw Kinsley's condition, her expression clouded. Is there something wrong? Well, let's take an X-ray, she suggested. Kinsley looked at me anxiously.
It's going to be okay,
I reassured her as I sent her off. And the result was, this isn't good, Sadie said with a serious look.
What do you mean by not good?
We'll talk about it later in detail. But, as I tilted my head, Sadie decisively said, it would be best for her to be hospitalized for a while. Eventually, when Kinsley was hospitalized, I was the only one called in, and was told clearly. Kinsley has osteosarcoma. This is, in other words, a type of pediatric cancer. Osteosarcoma. Pediatric cancer. Indeed, the term sent a chill through me as well. Osteosarcoma, I timidly asked about it, recalling a book I read long ago where the protagonist was diagnosed with it.
Does this mean, that she might have to have her leg amputated or something?
In the book, that's what the protagonist was told.
No, I don't think it's come to that, but if left untreated, it could become quite serious. So let's start treatment early.
I had no choice but to leave it to Dr. Sadie. Once it's termed as treatment, there's nothing more I can say. James felt the same way. When I first told James about Kinsley's illness, he said to me,
I see. This is serious. But it'll be okay. Just leave it to Dr. Sadie.
And then, as if he had another busy day tomorrow, he quickly went to sleep. Honestly, our relationship wasn't exactly in a good place. I convince myself that maybe this is normal for families, as much as I can see through my own attempts at convincing. 13 years of marriage. Since Kinsley's birth, I've been more of a mother than a wife, aware that James no longer saw me as a woman. Gaining weight was probably one reason for that. There's a definite reason, but it's nothing I can do anything about. Right now, we're more a family with a child than a couple, living our lives calmly. Still, I thought he could show some surprise or concern as a father when he heard his daughter was hospitalized. Meanwhile, Kinsley seemed upset she couldn't go to the middle school.
Mom, how long do I have to stay in the hospital? Well, it might take a bit.
That's all I could say. Honestly, it sucks.
I was looking forward to making friends in middle school, and now I can't.
Her words pained me. Kinsley had been looking forward to joining a sports club in middle school and having fun. Yet, her middle school life stumbled from the start.
By the way, Mom. What is it? Dad hasn't come to visit at all, has he? It's boring enough not being able to see my friends, but I only get to see you and Dr. Sadie all day.
Kinsley said this with a fleeting look of loneliness. Indeed. It seemed she hadn't been able to meet anyone lately. Though we could let her friends visit, the clinic wouldn't allow it. It's a critical time now, they say, administering treatment IVs and urging rest, if not absolute, then to a certain extent. Is it really such a critical time? But as a layperson, I couldn't understand. And as for James, I keep asking, please, could you go visit Kinsley? But the response I get is, sorry, but I'm really swamped right now. I don't have time to deal with you.
It's not about me, it's about Kinsley.
I argue back.
Maybe it's okay to ignore me, but can you really ignore your own daughter?
Give me a break. I'm at a crucial point right now, wondering if I can make department head. If this ruins my chances, what are you gonna do? Our living situation isn't gonna improve at all.
I don't mind that. I was planning on getting a part-time job anyway, and that would allow us to think about what's next for Kinsley.
However, James cut off the conversation saying, you don't understand anything. This line, you don't understand anything, has been one of James' frequent complaints towards me. Come to think of it, this tendency has been there since the beginning. I've known James since we were both working at the same company, but his attitude subtly changed after he met my brother when we were considering marriage. I lost my parents in an accident during my high school years. Since then, my older brother Michael, who is a bit older, has acted as my guardian. By the way, my brother is a veteran nurse. It's been his dream for a long time to become a strong male nurse who can take on the tough tasks often shirked by female nurses. And his wife, my sister-in-law Sophia, is a bit older than him and a female doctor. To outsiders, they might seem like an unlikely couple, but I've always thought they were perfect for each other. And they seem genuinely happy together. I've always thought it would be nice to have a marriage like theirs. Since they're workaholics without children, they've always adored Kinsley since she was born. While pondering over my life with James, I suddenly remembered I hadn't told my brother and his wife about Kinsley's situation. What was I thinking? What have I been doing? Sure, I was distraught by the sudden events, but I hadn't contacted the two people who always worry about Kinsley. I hurriedly got in touch with them. They responded immediately, yelling through the tablet screen, "Why didn't you tell us sooner?"
I'm sorry, I was just a bit overwhelmed. Well, that's understandable. But pediatric cancer, osteosarcoma? Are you sure that clinic is okay?
Sophia asked, tilting her head.
What do you mean? First off, is the diagnosis based solely on an X-ray?
I'm sorry, I don't know much about it. The two exchanged glances, realizing their mistake. They can delve into professional discussions when it's just the two of them, but I'm just a layperson. They sometimes seem to forget that.
Oh, sorry. So, what's happening now? She's hospitalized, getting 4 treatments every day. They said now is a crucial time.
The two looked at each other again, their expressions turning anxious.
Emily, doesn't that seem a bit off? What's off about it? I'm sorry, but just hearing about it, their approach seems medically unsound.
Is that so? I tilted my head.
First of all, diagnosing pediatric cancer or osteosarcoma with just that amount of information is strange. What about blood tests? CT scans? You need various data to make a diagnosis.
Right, Michael chimed in.
And to hospitalize her immediately for that treatment? That seems too strange even for me.
So, what should we do? As I asked, Michael's face turned serious.
First off, you need to stop that treatment immediately. Right. Without proper diagnosis, they can't prescribe the correct medication. It's strange to do anything just based on that diagnosis.
That might be true.
And if pediatric cancer is indeed the correct diagnosis, attempting to treat it in your local clinic seems far too odd.
My area. Now that you mention it, that makes sense.
There are general hospitals around here, right? Like ours, if it's said to be pediatrics, certain actions must be taken. So, it shouldn't just be dealt with at a clinic, but rather, she needs to be taken to a general hospital first. Oh, right.
What was I thinking? It was the same when Kinsley was born, wasn't it? When Thatcher Clinic couldn't handle it, we were transported to a major hospital by the instructions of the previous doctor. Thanks to that, both Kinsley and I were saved. It's shameful that I had forgotten such a thing.
So, what should I do now? Regardless of the reason, if she's being given some unclear medication, that needs to be addressed first. I understand. But what can I do? What am I able to do?
Then Sophia said, call an ambulance.
An ambulance? Even from a town clinic, when they can't handle a case, it's common to call an ambulance to transfer to a larger hospital. Please, Emily, that's your role.
My brother pressed on.
In the meantime, we'll investigate that doctor.
I froze at the word investigate. What does that mean?
Right. For our beloved niece, we won't spare any efforts. She's like a daughter to us too. How could we not step in at a time like this?
Tears involuntarily rolled down my cheeks as my brother and Sophia said this.
I'm truly grateful, thank you so much. It's nothing. By the way, how is James doing?
I tilted my head at Sophia's question.
Isn't this a critical situation for your daughter? And James is doing nothing? Well, James is currently overwhelmed with whether he can become a department head, so he hasn't even visited the hospital.
The two exchanged glances, nodding emphatically as if they had come to an understanding.
Anyway, you need to call 911 to get Kinsley transferred to our hospital. Understood.
And so, I rushed to Thatcher Clinic and headed straight for Kinsley's room. But what met my eyes as I opened the door was Kinsley, looking utterly drained. What happened? As I was about to press the nurse call button, I remembered our earlier conversation. Right, 911. I made the call from within the hospital. Excuse me, I'm calling from Thatcher Clinic, but something's wrong with my daughter. Though there was a moment of confusion on the other end, probably wondering why I was calling from inside the clinic, they seemed to understand the urgency as I pleaded, please, I'm begging you. Please, please. The ambulance arrived before long. And just as it did, another car pulled up as well. It was Sophia's. From the hospital room window, I saw the siren's light fade as it parked in front of Thatcher Clinic. Paramedics emerged from the ambulance. I frantically waved from the window.
Over here! Over here! What is all this about? What's going on?
Then, the clinic's nurse rushed out in a panic. Following that, Sophia, still in her white coat, burst out of the car saying, "It's an emergency," and scrambled towards our room.
Sophia! Kinsley is... Emily, how is Kinsley?
Sophia immediately went to Kinsley's side, saw the 4 bag, and her face turned to shock. She hastily removed the 4 needle from the arm, checked Kinsley's pulse, eyes, and several other things, then quickly explained the situation to the paramedics.
Understood. This is bad, we need to hurry.
The paramedics, acknowledging the urgency, placed Kinsley on a stretcher. Hearing the commotion, Dr. Sadie rushed into the room.
What are you doing? Why is there an ambulance here? And why are you doing this to Kinsley? Eh? Who are you? Why are you doing this without the consent of me, her primary physician?
Dr. Sadie let out all in one breath, then glared sharply at both me and Sophia. Undaunted, Sophia glared back at Dr. Sadie and declared,
I am this lady's, Emily's, sister-in-law, Kinsley's aunt. And I'm also a doctor at the Central Hospital.
At those words, Dr. Sadie flinched.
The symptoms Kinsley is showing now are clearly due to an overdose from this 4. What were you thinking giving her this?
Dr. Sadie's face changed color as she looked at the 4 bag in Sophia's hand.
What exactly is going on here?
I asked.
At the very least, it's obvious from Kinsley's symptoms that we can guess what's happening. Let's head to the Central Hospital right away. Yes, okay. And you?
Sophia pointed sharply at Dr. Sadie.
I have a lot of questions for you later. Be prepared. You've done this to my dear niece.
Then, a clicking sound of Dr. Sadie's tongue could be heard. It was the first time I'd seen her display such an attitude. We need to go now, Sophia said, and I followed everyone out quickly. But as we passed by Dr. Sadie, I clearly heard her say,
having such allies despite being so helpless.
A low, resentful voice. I never thought she harbored such feelings towards me.
Let's go.
Sophia urged, and I boarded the ambulance. Soon after arriving at the Central Hospital's emergency department, Kinsley was quickly treated and her condition improved rapidly.
Why was she given such a large dose of this?
Both the paramedics and the doctors were astonished to see the 4 bag that had been brought in. It was a solution used for treatment, they explained. But not something that should be administered all day long.
Was she hospitalized not to get better, but to worsen?
The straightforward surprise from the surrounding doctors astounded me.
But why? Dr. Sadie has always been looking after her so carefully. Why would she?
As I explained that Kinsley had been hospitalized on suspicion of osteosarcoma, immediate tests were conducted. However, the doctors who conducted the CT scan turned pale on the spot.
Osteosarcoma? You must be joking. This is just arthritis. Ridiculous, how could such a basic misdiagnosis happen?
The emergency room doctor was furious enough to say that. Is that so? Can such a distinction be made so easily? I was astonished. No, it's not that simple for a layperson to determine. Was Dr. Sadie deceiving me, using that fact?
Anyway, our hospital has a private room available, so let's closely monitor her until she recovers.
At my brother's words, a private room? I was surprised.
It's okay. It's available now, and don't worry about the cost, we'll cover it.
Despite my concerns, nothing could replace Kinsley's life. That night, I stayed overnight in the private room, having a side bed set up for me. Kinsley, whose consciousness had recovered thanks to the treatment, was scared and wanted me to stay with her all the time. I, too, had decided in my heart that I must stay with her at all times, not knowing what might happen. And then, after Kinsley had fallen asleep that night, just as I was starting to doze off, I suddenly heard soft footsteps in the corridor outside. I immediately woke up but pretended to be asleep. Then, the sound of the hospital room door quietly opening. Someone was approaching with muffled footsteps. I thought I could finally do something for that person. Now that it has come to this. It was Dr. Sadie's voice. With this, along with her voice, the sound of rummaging through a bag could be heard. Then, she pulled out a small bottle and a syringe. While I was getting ready to move, I squinted to see what she was doing. Dr. Sadie opened the small bottle, filled the syringe with some liquid, and reached for Kinsley's arm. That's when I shouted, "What are you doing?" and leaped up, tackling Dr. Sadie. With a gasp, the bottle and syringe fell to the floor.
Oh, you're heavy. I can't breathe. You were awake? It's not about me being awake. Get off. You're too heavy.
Though I wasn't twice Dr. Sadie's weight, I was about 1.5 times heavier. Struggling, Dr. Sadie couldn't move at all under my weight. Our commotion woke Kinsley, who cried out in surprise, why? What's happening?" I told her, "Kinsley, press the nurse call button." Okay, Kinsley pressed the nurse call button frantically, over and over. Then, the sound of someone approaching from the nurse's station could be heard. The door opened, and the light turned on.
What in the world is going on here?
It was my brother who spoke. Again, a clicking sound of Dr. Sadie's tongue could be heard.
Emily, well done.
As he said that, my brother secured Dr. Sadie's hands and feet with bands.
This should keep her from moving for now.
He picked up the dropped medicine bottle, his expression contorting.
What were you planning to do with our niece's life?
My brother's anger was palpable.
Because you were taking her away from our clinic. I thought of a more peaceful, painless way to handle this for her, but you forced my hand to act quickly. To act for what, exactly?
Her vague words frightened me as I began to grasp their meaning. My brother looked at me and stated clearly.
In other words, despite being a doctor, she was targeting Kinsley's life.
I felt like I was choking upon hearing this.
What were you trying to do to me, Dr. Sadie?
Kinsley also cried out in a voice close to tears. Then, more noise at the door. Sophia and someone else were there.
Ah, so she really came after all. You expected this?
I thought if we did this, she would surely come directly. That's why we chose the private room. It's better not to disturb the other patients, after all. Then, Sophia gestured for the person behind her to come in.
We rushed to investigate, and the answer came back incredibly fast, didn't it? Right, James?
I didn't understand why James was here.
What's this about? My brother-in-law, sister-in-law calling me at this hour.
Ah, James, it's all over. Everything we've done has been exposed.
Sadie, why are you here? And why are you in that state?
James noticed Dr. Sadie, who was restrained and on the floor, and hurriedly spoke to her.
James? Sadie? You are on a first-name basis?
I exclaimed, and my brother shushed me. Ah, right. Kinsley was listening. It's okay, Mom. Kinsley shouted. I want to know everything anyway. After all, I'm here and suffered because of what Dad and Dr. Sadie did, right? You're very perceptive, Kinsley. Sophia said, gently patting Kinsley's shoulder and back. I'm already in middle school. I'd rather know than have it hidden from me. Please tell me, Mom. I was torn and angry at myself for being helpless. Sophia, holding the drug, confronted Dr. Sadie.
What you brought was a muscle relaxant, right? If injected directly at this concentration, it's obvious what would happen to her body.
Sophia's hands were gloved. Undoubtedly to preserve evidence.
The visitors are here for you.
Then, several more visitors arrived in the room. It was indeed good that the room was spacious. The visitors, flashing police badges at James and Dr. Sadie, declared firmly. We're from the County Police Department. Sadie Thatcher, you are under arrest for the current offense. James McKinnon, as an accomplice,
you'll also come with us."
Upon hearing this, James reflexively tried to flee the scene.
"Hold on. You can't just run away."
My brother's strong hand grabbed James' shoulder.
"I've been acting as Emily's guardian since our parents died. I thought I could trust you to make our family happy, but what the hell? Your own child."
While restraining my yelling brother, Sophia allowed another person to enter.
We really had to rush the investigation. It took a lot of manpower, but thanks to that, we found out. This guy, he's been embezzling quite a bit from the company."
"Embezzlement?" I couldn't help but blurt out, and James averted his gaze.
"Yes, sorry, I'm from a detective agency. We were asked to investigate urgently." "But James said he was too busy possibly becoming a department head, that he couldn't even come home, let alone visit his hospitalized daughter."
The detective continued matter-of-factly.
About that. It's actually the opposite. He was supposed to become a department head, but that got put on hold because of suspicions of embezzlement." "I had no idea he was involved in such things."
It was beyond my imagination.
"And to cover the embezzled amount, he wanted the insurance money." "Insurance money?" "He had a $400,000 life insurance policy on Kinsley."
The implications didn't immediately register with me.
"James, were you planning to cover it with Kinsley's life?" "I had no choice. Otherwise, I'd be kicked out of the company." "What are you saying?"
I couldn't help but raise my hand against James. With a loud smack, my hand struck James' cheek and he fell to the ground.
"Damn, you've really gotten big. That's why I've lost my attraction to you. That's a separate issue. No matter how much I've gained weight or whatever, you always had eyes for the beautiful Dr. Sadie. That's right, ever since you gave birth and kept gaining weight."
I was at a loss for words. I wished I could have stayed slim. But
"I got sick during my pregnancy, it couldn't be helped." "That's right. Emily developed kidney problems during her pregnancy. It's understandable that she gained weight after that."
Sophia supported me.
"That's beside the point, but it was Dr. Sadie who comforted me during that time."
The police officers sighed upon hearing this.
Forget about that now. What matters is this man tried to take his daughter's life. And the husband solicited her to do it. We'll take these two in custody. I understand your anger, ma'am, but you don't want to be charged with assault, do you?"
I paused, realizing.
"We'll try to keep you out of any charges, considering you'll have a lot on your plate with your daughter."
"Yes."
"Oh, but can I ask just one thing? Didn't you love Kinsley?"
I asked James.
"I did, at first. But as you kept gaining weight, I started to worry Kinsley would end up the same, and I just didn't care anymore." "So, Dad, you thought of me that way. And then you just didn't need me anymore."
Kinsley began to cry. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," I hugged Kinsley. "It's because of me."
"No, it's not your fault, Mom. You always did what was best for me. Even a middle schooler can see that Dad is just blaming everything on you. I don't even want to call him Dad anymore. Just do whatever you want." "Yes, that's the best way."
Sophia agreed.
"And you were the head of Thatcher Clinic, right? For someone in the medical profession to do such a thing, even if it was attempted, you can never return to this industry. Was this man so important to you that you were willing to throw away your entire career? You wouldn't understand."
Dr. Sadie threw back at us, sounding frustrated.
"I worked hard to take over the clinic after putting in so much effort, but James was the only one who saw me as a woman. Do you understand how that feels? There's no way I would. I'm not you. I did make an effort. Unlike you. I really tried hard when it came to her."
My brother and Sophia nodded to each other. Then Dr. Sadie groaned and passed out on the spot. Sophia checked her pulse and her condition, then told the police she was okay to be taken away. And then I faced James, saying,
I'll have a lawyer file for divorce. You don't care about us anymore, right? If it's all the same to you, then stay out of our lives for good. And I'll be taking alimony and child support for raising this child. I don't ever want to see you again, so make it a lump sum.
I never imagined I could say such a thing so calmly. It must have been building up inside me for a long time. James glared at me in frustration. But I won't be defeated by such things anymore.
So, goodbye forever.
I said that to James for the last time. After their arrest, the two were put on trial. Due to the premeditated nature of their actions and the intent to take a life, they were sentenced to prison despite it being attempted. Thatcher Clinic also closed due to Dr. Sadie's arrest. The former head doctor, despite his old age, was busy writing referral letters for current patients. It turned into quite a mess.
I'm truly sorry for what I've done.
No, we've been indebted to you for a long time.
How did it come to this?
I asked, and the former head doctor sighed. Maybe my expectations were too high. I felt reluctant to take the alimony, but the former head doctor made sure it was paid properly.
With the two of you facing tough times ahead, the clinic's closing anyway, and we'll get some money from selling the equipment,
he said kindly. James was, of course, found guilty. He was charged as an instigator, complaining that a prison sentence was too harsh for him. Unfortunately, under the law, instigation is considered complicity. He received a prison sentence. After all, it was James' idea, and without him, Dr. Sadie might not have strayed. The attempted insurance murder of their daughter became a regional news story. Being a victim made it difficult for me to continue living in the area. That's when my brother and Sophia suggested, how about moving far away?
We were thinking of going into remote medical service for a while. Since I'm a doctor and Michael is a nurse, it seemed perfect. We were planning to move eventually, but the timing never matched. So, why not go together?
They invited me to join them. Perhaps because the incident made it uncomfortable to stay at the hospital. But they never explicitly said so, and in that silence, I could feel their kindness. So, I decided to take them up on their offer. After a while, we moved to a distant area. Though it was considered a remote area, a shopping mall was just an hour's drive away. Essentially, the local clinic there had been without a successor, and there was a period with no doctor available. While it's possible to drive to a hospital, having a reliable place within the town, especially for areas with a high elderly population where not everyone can drive, having a clinic within walking distance is invaluable. Considering this, Thatcher Clinic, where Dr. Sadie had committed her acts, must have been a significant loss to the community. In the new place, I was employed in an administrative role at the clinic. Though they initially said they couldn't offer much salary due to my lack of experience, I didn't mind. Having a job gap and just thinking about starting part-time work, I was grateful for any opportunity. With the alimony and child support added, I could sufficiently raise my daughter. Kinsley's health also returned to normal, and she grew taller rapidly. It seems the arthritis was related to growing pains. What a thing to exploit, I thought. Lately, in this sparsely populated area, she's been thriving in sports clubs and living freely. With my brother and his wife, and my daughter forming a new family, I wish for us to live peacefully